I was like, this experience I was supposed to go through. Like there was something there. I look back and I'm like, it's not the circle itself that matters. It's the fact that I recognized I'm going in circles, and
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that it's not about me and my ego deriving every solution or find all the meaning. It's for me to like have some faith, have some, because either this whole thing is meaningful or it's not. And I don't mean that journey or that process. I said journey. Uh, I need to clean my glasses. They
Go for
are
it.
bothering me. So yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
yeah. Nice to see you again.
You too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a fun chat. I didn't think too much about the recording. I'm sure you would have wanted it, and I wanted it to have the recording and stuff. But I genuinely remember at the end of the recording, I asked you, like, did you record it? Because
Yeah.
that's when it struck me. I thought we were just having a regular conversation, introductory call, and that's fine either way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So then it was for the best. I felt really bad because I tried to record in Discord, but it turns out Discord only that doesn't record sound with
such a
the game
useless thing. Oh, it's
Xbox
because
game
it's
bar for some
gaming?
reason. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Maybe
man.
that's it because Xbox game bar assumes you're playing a game, so maybe you don't want the voice chat. I don't know.
I
So
mean,
it
you
was
don't,
a
maybe
setting.
it's the default settings.
Yeah.
Like by
Yeah.
default, there's no voice, and then you can do some
Yeah.
advanced
That was
settings.
it.
I think that's their way of saving bandwidth and chaos as well, is like all the
Yeah.
audio coming in all at once when it's just a game.
Yeah. Exactly. And
Mm.
I think I muted your channel on the mixer thing. I
And
had
that,
yeah. So I had
and
two
that, so that
recordings, no
helps.
sound. Yeah.
Cool, cool. That's cool. It's okay. We can maybe we can revisit some things and generally keep it organic otherwise.
Hmm.
Do you have any, like, do you remember what the agenda? I remember what the agenda was the last time. I know we were just doing almost like an introductory thing,
Yeah.
and then we went off into mental health eventually.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I think I was talking about where I was and what my path has been. And I hate the word journey now. It's so overused in mental health marketing. Like journey, like it's
Yeah. It's
not
like a
that deep. I
buzzword.
don't want it to sound that
Yeah. What word should
elitist.
we use instead? Is
No,
there
you can
better?
use whatever you want. In my head, I feel like journey, really, bro. Like, really, it's not that crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I just said path. So that's when I was
Path.
reminded. Like,
Yeah.
that's a good, yeah, my path. Let's ruin this word now.
Yeah. That's how
Anyway,
we do
yeah.
it.
So I can talk about that, or we can actually keep it organic and see where it goes. Up to
Yeah.
you.
I'd love to because I felt like your path was really would be useful for people to hear about. I found it useful at least. So, but it's up to you, of course. What I can remember is COVID. That COVID had a large impact on where you are now.
Yeah, yeah. I I think it did. I think I think it did for a lot of people. That's what was my take on it. Is a lot of people who are just living their everyday lives and just commuting to work and then working and then doing all of the different things, networking, hanging out with friends, family, pets, whatever. It's so easy for you to just buy into the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm against the system or anything. I'm just saying the general, like, you don't have time to introspect as much, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, 'cause you can keep yourself busy all the time.
Ye-
'Cause-
Yeah, you can, and pretty much you end up having to. It's not even a choice, right? Pre-COVID, when this whole working remotely is like not the default, or at least not as common.
Mhm.
it didn't give you enough time to like hit reset in a sense.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think for a lot of people, including myself, like that that became like initially it became like a bane almost. Like
A
oh
what?
my god, I like it's a curse
Yeah.
initially,
Yeah.
right? It's like oh my god, I now have to deal with just my thoughts and myself
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
all
had that
alone at
feeling as
home.
well. You get off work and you get up and you're like, okay, this place again. Nowhere
Yeah,
to go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what are we doing? And I was also living alone, and I had the whole place, and it was locked down everywhere. In hindsight, it was an opportunity, but at the time, I didn't perceive it as an opportunity. I was just like, oh my God, like I was enjoying being left alone in a sense.
Yeah.
It's not that I was craving social interaction at all. I was actually very comfortable with that. But it was just like a lot of things that you tend to think about when things quiet down. Um, and didn't come up a lot pre-shutdown because you just don't have that opportunity of being quiet for a while
Yeah.
around you, whatever. And yeah, and then a lot of questions started coming up like, okay, what are we doing? What's going on? Where are we going? By we, I mean just myself. I don't mean like humanity. I wasn't
So
thinking that.
I'm hearing you had extra time, basically. Maybe
Yeah,
you were commuting and stuff, and that all falls away.
yeah. Commuting, I would say even at work because of just the things going around all
Yeah, the
over the
water
world.
cooler talks and all of that stuff. That
That and also I think somehow work slowed down for a lot of people. Right? And for me, like my team, like my boss at the time was like, yeah, let's all, we know a lot is going on. Let's all slow down. I'm like, no,
no,
that's worse.
speed up.
Let's do more. Like this is not good.
Yeah,
And I mean, it was a very nice. He's a very nice person, and but his intentions are good. But then I was like, no, I want to do stuff, man.
yeah,
I don't want to be left to my own devices. Yeah, so I think I think a lot of people in hindsight, I talk to people and everyone talks about that one period as being particularly transformative, I would say. Um, Not good for
no,
everyone, I will say that.
no, no,
Not
no,
good
no,
for everyone
definitely not.
because it's like I don't know, like you know how you have those mathematical equations, I think 1 plus x power n whatever,
Oh yeah,
where
the, like
not the
unknowns,
exact
or
equation. No,
yeah,
no, no. I'm saying like the power or the value of x can be 0.99 or 1.01. It's
yeah,
just that minor difference, but that makes the difference between is your value
mm,
constantly going down, like are you spiraling down or up?
yeah. So exponential
So
difference. Yeah,
exponential. Essentially, I'm saying it's like a compounding. Let's say it's compounding or exponential, however you want to think about it. It's basically like it's not that much of a difference between going down that path and spiraling down versus spiraling up. It's that
no,
minor difference that happens.
yeah,
And I don't think a lot of people came out of it. Um, I'm not saying I'm out and I'm like very positive, extremely everything's great. I'm not saying that, but I think I've definitely seen worse ways of handling that situation or ending up with that situation. A lot of addictions, and yeah, generally not having fully come out of that loop. And that's why I
mm,
say, in hindsight, for me, it was an opportunity, but it could have been a nightmare
yeah. What do you think
very easy.
makes that difference for people if it's a spiral up or spiral down?
I, if I have to be honest, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I tend to think it's some sort of grace that you get from higher beings, or, it depends on how you want to view it. If you're a spiritual person, you may have like 5 or 6 ways of thinking about it. You say either it's the prayers or someone, or some might say it's just your karma was good enough in the past that you're able to, sort of get out of this thing. There's some, I mean, if you want to be a little more secular about it. You could think of like a manifested good things. I don't know how that
Mm-hmm.
works, but I'm just going. If you want a more completely secular answer, I don't know.
Yeah.
Outside of that answer, I don't have a very clear answer of what worked for me.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful, obviously. From a prescriptive point of view, if I were a therapist and you came to me and you said, how do I get out of this? Like, I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Grace,
I
I
did
suppose.
it,
Good
so
luck.
but I'm not sure how.
I'm not sure how.
Good luck.
I'm being very helpful, right?
Yeah.
No, but I do. So I don't think it's luck. I'm not saying it's only luck
No.
because luck just sounds random. And I
Mm.
don't think it's that random. I'm not saying it's random.
No.
I'm saying that, but there is an element of unknown and unpredictable,
Yeah.
not random. Unpredictable means I am unable to predict it. That doesn't mean it is inherently random.
No. So maybe what you I look at it like very complex with your
Right.
genes and your parents and your upbringing and what
It's
happened
a
before
very
and what.
high order
Yeah.
equation, very high order equation, right?
Mm.
Imagine as a human, my best intellect can solve order 10 equation, right? And this is probably much, much higher, several orders higher, right?
Yeah.
So I that's how I like to think about it is like don't strain your little mind with how that happened because I don't have the answer to it and I can keep going in circles and it doesn't change the effect of it for me.
Mm.
But I do like I do understand like a lot of people want to emulate something or like if I were listening to someone who talked about their path,
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm looking for what can I do,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Same.
I'm not just looking for well that worked for them. I'm so happy for them. Like you want to know what you can do to get out of it.
Yeah.
For me, I will say as a prescriptive thing that I would take away from my experience has been like I think it helps to be spiritual, even if your heart is not in it, because I didn't go into it like I was always this very conscientious, spiritual, religious person. I was not. Like I was just the average person, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
against, not for, whatever. It's like, oh, life is good. Why do you care about anything, right? But
Yeah.
then I think it helps to try to be spiritual because it gives you some support when it's like humans around you cannot answer all the questions you have put
No.
together, right?
Yeah.
So
I've had the same experience. I think I mentioned it last time as well that I've been. I think I was an atheist as a 15-year-old, something like that,
and
and I
as you're
realized
supposed
that
to be at
this
15.
is not going to cut it.
Yeah.
But so I tried different paths, but I was usually sitting there thinking like I don't like this either.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think, unlike what one might see in media, I don't think most atheists are like anti-theists. It's not like I hated people who are religious or had faith or whatever. At worst, I was indifferent.
Hmm.
It's like I don't feel that faith or belief. And I think at 15, most people don't.
Yeah,
Either they are indifferent or they just don't feel that. And I think that's fine so long as they're open to feeling it at some point if
yeah,
it happens to them,
yeah. You can't
right? They
really
don't have to
force
hate
it
it.
either.
Yeah, you can't.
You can even be like atheist, like I was an atheist, and I kind of wanted to feel that, but I just wasn't able to at that point.
Right, right. And I don't know how that happens. I don't know if that like changes your belief or whatever. But I mean, it's good to try it. I would say if you're being very scientific about it, I'll say, what's the worst that could happen? You still come out of it as an atheist and you still have the same set of problems, but at least you tried
Yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah. Yeah, and like yeah,
Um,
I've been really. I think it all fixed itself for me, or not fixed itself, but
mhm.
I got more open and was able to believe more with listening to Dr. K talking about how you're made up of all of these different things, where one
Yeah.
is spirituality,
Right, 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 right,
and
right,
that
right.
helped a lot for me, like
I
putting
see.
it in context.
I think he's doing a really um, good job articulating some of these things. I feel like the concepts he's talking about. from an Eastern spirituality or Hinduism per se point of view or dharma point of view,
Mm-hmm.
they're not. It's not like he's inventing those concepts, and he's not
No, no, no.
claiming to either. That's not what I'm saying. But but the difference for me was he's able to articulate it in a way that is both somewhat appeals to the scientific temper, because we all have some of that.
Yeah.
It's not like just because you have faith, I'm just going to do something idiotic and say my faith is greater than this, right? But he appeals to the scientific temper. But what I also really like is he does not dilute the concepts to appeal to scientific temper.
No.
Like he does, because I used to follow Sam Harris a lot, right? And I
Sam
think
Harris.
Sam Harris,
Okay.
you've heard of him, right?
I don't know. I don't
Okay,
think so.
he's a I would call him like a public thinker in the US. Like he's a neuro scientist or surgeon or something. That's his profession. But he's a huge advocate for atheism.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like Dawkins in the US, maybe much
Okay.
younger
Yeah.
though.
Dawkins I've heard of. Yeah.
Dawkins. He's like Dawkins. I mean, sort of, I would say, in the same bracket. And but he's a very rational person. He's not just like Dawkins. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going around just lampooning things. He was very conscious, and he was also super into meditation. And he would talk about meditation like this is what's going on with the neurons, and this is what's going
Mm-hmm.
on
So
when you do
purely
this.
from a
Purely
neurological or
scientific,
scientific.
neurological,
Yeah.
scientific, and he was very spiritual in a different sense. Like he almost understood it very scientifically, and to
Mm-hmm.
me that was good at the time. I was a huge follower of that, but then what that did was it didn't answer questions beyond, like, if you want to say, okay, why am I doing all this, why am I doing anything good for myself or for others, your answers can't be there. From your neurons will produce dopamine, like that doesn't, it may be true and it is technically true, but
Yeah.
it doesn't answer the question.
No. No, it leaves something to be desired, I think.
Yeah. It answers the how, not the why. Still
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
how, right?
So this
And
happens, but
so
why? Why do I get up in the
correct.
morning?
Why does dopamine need to exist
Yeah.
and do these things to me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
It's not,
exactly.
I'm not questioning the science of dopamine exists or not. I'm not
No.
saying it's spirits and not dopamine. That's not where I'm going. But so for me, Dr. K was good because he wasn't trying to take away the non-scientific parts of it or a scientific parts of it. I'm not saying it's unscientific, it's a scientific, right?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with science.
Yeah.
It's how you subjectively feel.
Mm.
You can talk about dopamine chemical equations, but that subjective experience is nothing.
Yeah.
It does not explain, or that equation does not explain the subjective experience you're having, good or
No.
bad. And so
Maybe it
Dr.
would
K
if we
really,
had all the data, but that's just not realistic for us to. We're so far from
if
understanding
you
anything
see a
about.
really beautiful blue sky, right? Perfectly blue sky, and you're really in awe, right? It's just that perfect day.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you the exact wavelength that is, but that doesn't mean anything.
No.
It's technically true, but that's not the experience of it.
No, it's not. And why
So,
am I having this experience? Where does it come
yeah,
from? How does it help me?
correct,
It's yeah.
exactly. And I went down a certain path that I didn't like because of Sam Harris. I'm not. He is talking. I think he comes from a place of good intentions, and he acts in good faith generally. I generally like his content, and I'm not questioning the credentials or the intentions. But I went down a path of nihilism because of it, like in a
Yeah.
sense that, oh, ultimately, so he also makes this case that there is no free will, and that's when my nihilism began.
Oh, yeah.
Because I followed him so much, I thought, well, he's right about everything. He's right about this. He was like, you have no free will. I can see exactly which neural path is causing you to make that choice between red and green right now, and I can predict that you are going to, like, I know the exact potential. That's true, but then that doesn't, like, it made me go down a path of, god dang it, nothing is, like, nothing is real, like my free will doesn't matter, whatever I do doesn't, like, and I don't think that's a good place for someone to go.
Why is it not a good, or how is it not a good path?
Because you're taking meaning away from everything now.
Mm.
Again, that's the distinction I'm making. I'm not saying he's technically wrong, but then you're taking away the spirit. You're dispiriting
Mm.
people. If they go down that path, like there is no free will, there is no reason to feel happiness or sadness. There is nothing. Like everything is just atoms and electrons. Like that's a very, you're taking away what default meaning there is in people's
Yeah.
lives. And you're not adding meaning, right? You're saying, well, the things that you thought are like this pleasure and pain and suffering and love and beauty is like neurons,
Yeah.
just neurons. You don't feel anything.
Yeah.
It's
You
you
get this
almost feel
inputs.
stupid
You.
for having that subjective experience. I used to feel stupid for feeling something intensely. I'd be like, oh, a lot of dopamine rush is what's going. Like you shouldn't be thinking that. You should be
No. No,
experiencing
I
it,
agree. I do agree,
right?
but I can't really pinpoint why I agree, if that makes sense.
I think it's, I think generally the culture now is if you say, do, or even think anything not exactly scientific slash rational, we sort of whip ourselves because we're like,
Mm.
oh, we're such idiots. Oh, you're such an idiot. You're just an animal. I think that's what's going on. And a lot of people who even are spiritual, they feel very apologetic and defensive about articulating it without pandering to excessive rationalism.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I was like that. I say this because I was like that. Like as a practicing Hindu dharmic, right? We do a lot of rituals and we do a lot of what is called idol worship. And
Mm.
we were constantly having to explain, like if I not even explain, well, sort of that, but more of like if I were to talk to you about my day and I would say like, oh, I did this puja, I did this prayer, right? Let's say prayer roughly. It's not a prayer, but it's more of a, it's a different set of rituals. um, Most people who even practice that would tend to be like, I did my prayer, a little bit of that, don't worry about it. Sort of, they themselves dismiss it away. And I think that's because we all feel like, oh, it's woo woo, it's not real, it's
Yeah.
such an
Or
unscientific
you
thing
have
to
to
do.
say something to counteract the fact that you said you were praying to like,
Exactly.
I'm totally a sane person despite
Yeah,
the
yeah.
praying.
I'm
I
a sane person. I'm
promise.
not. I'm not like that. I just do that.
Yeah.
It's like saying I just smoke every. It's I know it causes cancer. It's not good for you, but I smoke every now and then.
Mm.
It's almost as bad as that. That's how they make it. I
Yeah.
think that's how they themselves feel, but that's a reflection of how they're conditioned to feel.
Mm.
Especially if you're like a dharmic person, like in India, because Abrahamic religions still have some global cultural acceptance. The sense that, like Christianity and Islam, these are religions that claim to be more universal in some
Mm.
ways, like one God and everyone's made by that God, all of those things. And in India, even in India, like the pagan religions,
Mm.
dharmic religions, they are made to be extra defensive. So we're not only having to tell rational people like, oh, it's not exactly rational, but we're also having to defend saying, oh, it's not exactly idol worship, we're not actually polytheists, we're
Mm.
not like, and I was in both those buckets, right?
Yeah.
Because I went to a Christian school, so
Oh.
we would be extra defensive, almost expected to be defensive.
Yeah.
I wasn't, even as a kid I would, like they would take us out to these retreats, prayer retreats, and we used to have these moral science classes, which was mostly biblical stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I did rebel against it, but the overall point being the culture is such that you are extra defensive and you have to like pretend it's just a little bad habit you indulge in every now and then, and it's bad and you're trying to get out of it, sort of. You
Yeah.
almost have to make it sound that way.
Yeah. I wasn't aware that
And
was cause I feel like it's almost the other way where I'm at now in Norway.
I know that's true too.
Yeah.
You guys have flipped it on
Yeah.
yourselves, but it's different in India.
It's like in Silicon Valley, they have this sketch where I think the app they're developing, that it's used by some Christian
Uh-huh.
organization, and they almost get cancelled over it.
Right. Right. No, I know that's true too, and that's increasingly true in the US as well. But in India, somehow, like these organizations, these institutions are pretty strong and pretty vocal.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with all of these defense mechanisms. I used to be like, oh, it's you do those set of rituals. It's like, oh, rituals help you connect, rituals help your mind calm down or stabilize or any of those things. We would constantly come up with these ways of saying, I don't actually think it's it took me some time to like shake all of that off and be like, no, the ritual is the ritual, and it has to be done in that exact
Mm.
whatever set of ways. Not because it calms my mind and because there is this neurological pathway. They all may be independently true, but there is spiritual value in this ritual. There is actual communion going on here,
Mm.
right? You
Yeah.
are communing with a certain deity, right? A
Yeah.
certain higher being through these exact set of steps. And it's almost like I had to re-educate myself through this, because this double whammy of being going to a Christian school and also having this Sam Harris influence.
Yeah.
And Sam Harris is one person, but he represents this. I work in the Silicon Valley, so I know what it's like, right? It's not, it's not persecuted. It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
strong
Yeah.
word, I would say.
This is the show, so it's a
I know,
joke. But
I know you're talking
yeah.
about the show.
Yeah.
I'm saying I work in the actual Silicon
Yeah.
Valley, and I don't think it is persecuted. Maybe that story could be true because it's an app and it's a business to business dealing. That may be true. But I'm saying as an individual, you practice, nobody
Mm.
bothers you. But in a social setting, it is a little more, they look at you like you were not as scientific as you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I've shaken that off.
Mm.
I work in high tech. I don't need anyone's validation of how science works.
No.
I know
Yeah.
someone.
Exactly.
I know, I understand science. I acknowledge it, accept it. I'm saying there are things beyond science, at least when it comes to subjective experience point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
Um,
imagine that's a tough environment to be in. I used to, because I was a Catholic before, and my family is Catholic, and I was Catholic for a while,
mhm.
and I knew this nun who worked in CERN, in like she was a nuclear
Oh,
physicist.
wow. Okay.
That was pretty cool, and I bet she also had a similar experience to what
Yeah.
you're.
I actually, the funny thing that you mentioned that is when I was in high school, like we call it junior college, like 11th and 12th grade, I used to be really into physics, right? And we did some fairly advanced physics. I mean, for that grade. And we used to read about all this quantum mechanics, introduction to it, and all the woo-woo stuff that goes on in there. And I used to find it, I mean, I used to be like, oh, there's so many parallels to a lot of these folk stories that we have about how the energy operates and stuff. Now, I have come to a point now where I'm like, I don't know if that's my imagination or if that is actually the parallel, because I've stopped looking for validation in science for things that have nothing to do with science.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Yeah.
folk mythologies have meaning independent of whether it maps to a certain god particle or a certain dark energy, or
Yeah.
people always come up and be like, oh, this description of this deity is such that it maps to what dark energy is in quantum physics. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but that doesn't take away or add to the spiritual value of that deity or their
Mm-hmm. And maybe it
mythological
doesn't
significance.
really have scientific value either.
It has no. I am completely in agreement with that. The thing is, it's very easy for believers of any sort of spiritual system to just pick the latest development in science and be like, yeah, we already knew that. Like, why didn't you come up with it then? Like,
Hmm.
why do you always already know stuff and
Yeah.
not I came up with it? Like, if you should have some predictive value, not just not just some sort of confirmation value there. I don't buy into those things for both reasons. The fact that it's a disservice to science. These people are really working hard and coming up with all of these ways of, it takes billions and billions of dollars, and they're doing a bigger CERN now, right? It's
Mm,
a bigger radius. They're
they
doing it
are.
across
Yeah.
the EU. Yeah, across the EU.
Yeah.
Like now it's just four countries around the Swiss Alps, I believe,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And now they're doing like five, I don't know, 10 times its size or something, like 11 countries for
Exciting.
greater acceleration and stuff. So basically, more acceleration. That's all they need.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, for you to just sit in your living room and be like, yeah, we already knew that. Like, no, you didn't. So it's a disservice to science,
But maybe it
but it's
feels
also,
like you already knew that, but you didn't.
I mean, my point is, even if you
Mm,
did you help humanity or did they? Like, if it's actually a crime for you to have already known that and not done something about it.
yeah.
It's like, imagine I have a cure for cancer. Like, people spend centuries trying to fix it. I'm like, yeah, I already knew that. Like, you asshole.
You
You just sat there.
should have told us if you knew that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also a disservice to the spiritual tradition
Mm.
because now you are hooking it on to a system that evolves. So tomorrow, now you say dark energy is this force we already knew, and then someone disproves dark energy. So they're disproving your deity?
Yeah. Yeah. That was what I was thinking as well. That it's not.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It-
And then you have this strong force to keep dark energy as a concept, and then you start fighting for something that, because in science you should be open. Well, in all things, maybe you should
Oh,
be open
don't worry. I
to
don't think the
changing.
people making these connections are influencing science in any way. They sit in their rooms, they
Are
just
you
come up
sure?
with, again, I'm not trying to disparage them. It's okay for a highly evolved person to sort of make some connections. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. The point is, don't then just stick to your area. You don't know the science, don't get harped up on it so much that you think now this is this proves my religion or
Yeah.
whatever.
I
So
think
yeah,
there
anyway,
can
so
be some
you go ahead.
overlap. There are some really, really smart people who believed in some.
Absolutely. I 100%, I think the more you go into any field, right? I personally think more of physics, but math, right? You become sort of mystical, I believe, because you discover certain things that really amaze you, and that is their subjective experience, right? I mean, in our country, in India, we talk about this great mathematician called Ramanujan, right?
Hmm.
From the 19th century and early 20th century. uh, Supposed to be a super genius. Like, he had no formal education in math, and he then went to Oxford. He was made a professor there, and he wrote all these algorithms that are now being like used in astronomy and computation. Like, there are a lot of theorems and algorithms he wrote that nobody understood. All of that. He's a genius, right?
Hmm.
Whatever. But if you read his own autobiography and stuff, he keeps saying the goddess came and gave me this. The goddess came and gave, like, because they used to keep saying you don't even have like 10th grade math, whatever,
Yeah.
or 12th grade math qualifications, and you are now in Oxford writing all these theorems that later get proved, and he would never give proofs
Yeah.
because he had no formal education in how to derive mathematical proofs or theorems or algorithms or
So he
whatever, right?
just wrote the algorithms or what?
He would just write findings. He would just come to him, and he would keep writing and scribbling. And he was one of those, have you watched The Beautiful Mind, John
Yeah.
Nash? It's one of those stories, right?
Hmm.
He would just see numbers, and he would see a car or something pass by. It would have like some number plate 117482, whatever. There's this anecdote. It's not the exact number. I'm just saying it's
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
random number like that, seemingly random to us.
Yeah. Hmm.
And he would just mention like, oh, this is the biggest prime, that is the power of something.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I
it's
get what
it's
you're
one of those
saying.
anecdotes, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out to be true and all of that stuff. And he would very coherently, in full, sane state of mind, be like, we have a family deity, and I seek her blessings, and she blesses me. It just comes to me. And he would name the deity. And I do believe that there are those people who are like so highly advanced in any field of reality that they start discovering things that are like beyond our regular realm, right? It could be dance, it could be physics, it could be anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's not the same as the average YouTuber just sitting there and being like, yeah, this dark energy is this god. Like, no, it's not.
Maybe there's. I was thinking now that maybe there's a goddess somewhere who can give me some interviewing skills. Or
Maybe. So we usually worship the goddess Saraswati for knowledge and skills. So she is. There are. I mean, the deities in Hinduism and Dharma have like very specific attributes. So Saraswati is in always clothed in white. She's always compared with the full autumn moon or an autumn full moon. Like she is resplendent like that and all of that. And she holds a musical instrument, and her animal is swan.
oh,
So we
yeah,
have
because
this
it's also
system of
white.
what we call vahanas. Vahanas are vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So a vehicle, but it's not like they sit on that vehicle and make them go. That's
No.
that's how we used to imagine it as a child. Is like why can't you just um, all deities, all energies have some imprint on certain species here. That's how we see it. And it's also true in Native American system.
Mm-hmm.
Like they say spirit animal, the
Yeah.
spirit of the wolf is in my family and all of that. So this is how we map almost every deity to certain animals.
Yeah, I
And
didn't
it
know
is
that.
said that
I knew the elephant one, I guess.
right,
Yeah.
but the elephant is the deity's face,
Okay, so
but
it's
their
not the
animal
animal,
is
it
the
maps.
mouse. The
What?
animal is the mouse.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So this is why it used to be funny to us as kids. Is like you, an elephant, you're gonna sit on a mouse and make it take you places. But that's not how you understand that. Like it's cruel. Well, that's not how one must understand it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's every deity has that. And for knowledge, you usually seek blessings of Saraswati. She's a female. I
Okay.
mean, it's a
I'll look into
goddess.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to evangelize. I'm just saying that's how we
No,
do it.
but I'm really interested. I want to start looking into it more and see if it can help with certain things. And
It's interesting if nothing
why
else. I'll
not?
give you
Yeah.
that.
And when Dr. K talks about like dangerous deities and stuff, I want to look
Dangerous
into it.
stuff.
But yeah,
Wait, what? What do you
yeah,
mean?
sometimes he does talk about, maybe it's in the membership streams. I don't know,
Uh,
but I think he has talked about it in the public ones as well. He just
uh,
sometimes he just mentions that it's like darker, more chaotic deities, and I find myself being very intrigued.
oh, deities. I see. I see.
Mm-hmm.
It is true. Yeah, we do have. I mean, it's an interesting. It's we the way we view it. It's that there are all kinds of higher forces. Now there is a supreme. I know a lot of Westerners, Abrahamic folks, would be like, so do you have a single God? There is, but then it's not that being, that thing doesn't interact. It's not a willing agent making change in your everyday lives or in your lives. Because to us it's like if that being really cared that there should only be good, there would only be good. There would
Mm-hmm.
be nothing else, right? To us it's like that thing is beyond human comprehension or reaching or understanding. But we have a lot of very high beings who are one with that core force,
Yeah.
and these beings can and do influence our lives. And so there are good ones and there are bad ones. And the bad ones are called asuras typically. So sura and asura is how
Mm.
we split
Okay,
them.
so it's like an
Almost,
opposite thing, like an
yeah,
angel and
beings
a
of light
devil.
and beings of darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sura, I think, almost means civilized,
Okay.
uh, and Asura is
No.
uncivilized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of mythological stories about, like a primordial fight between them and certain. The way I at least used to understand them, and I think it still is true to some extent, is these are primordial consciousness forces that did have a clash. And the reason we have a generally good universe around is because the beings of light prevailed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost it's almost not a good thing to think about that it is possible that there are realms where the darker beings are more powerful.
Yeah.
And so we call them devas, the suras, or the devas, or the deities. And all the others have various kinds of names. They're not all one type, but generally they're called asuras. And there are darker ones, and people do also seek help from darker ones too. Like, this is what we call black magic.
It's
Is
kind of like when you make a deal with the devil to become
exactly,
a
it's exactly a deal.
awesome guitarist or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like in India, you have some people who or I don't know what the word is, but they summon almost the darker beings, and they do benefit tremendously in the material realm because of it. But then the understanding is that they've made a deal that is ultimately bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the afterlife, like, what is afterlife? Like, not in this life. Once they're gone, they're probably sort of beholden to this dark force for a long, long time, and it's not a good deal to make.
Mm-hmm. It's
So
karma that comes into play then, maybe.
karma comes into play, and it's a I wouldn't say I'm a very good person to explain that, to be honest. I'm still a student, like I'm sort of still learning that.
Yeah.
um
You know more,
but
a
yeah,
lot more than me, so that helps. So,
I mean, but I do come from Hindu tradition, so I'm talking more about my own, right? um so it's funny because when we used to go to Christian school, there were preachers who would say, don't worship satanic beings, demonic beings, and they meant our gods.
mm-hmm.
But
Oh,
then
that's
now I even
interesting that
understand.
they're kind of another religion, but they're
Correct. Yeah.
afraid
So,
of
I,
some beings in yours in a way.
yeah. And I think in the Christian understanding, all other beings are negative beings, sort of. So they're seen as devils and blah, blah, blah. And I would say, especially for a European in 14th, 15th century who comes to India and looks at all these deities with all sorts of attributes, and definitely fierce attributes. Not
Mm-hmm.
all deities are, like Saraswati, who is a gentle swan vehicle, and, full moon kind of whatever. There are very fierce deities, and it would have scared the hell out of them. They
Yeah, I
probably
bet.
thought these are the devils that we are warned
Yeah.
against, sort of.
Yeah, and in the
Um,
Bible, you also get this whole thing with not for worshiping other
the
gods
other
and making
god.
fake
Yeah.
idols, and then you see this fierce, kind of
Yeah,
scary thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it definitely like played into what was already on their mind. Is I wouldn't blame them from that point of view, because if I walked into a ritual of some South American culture, and if I didn't know anything, and I was already in this sense of fear about, this is a new continent, these are a new people, there's all kinds of devils around, then I would definitely, my first instinct would be, what the hell is this?
Mm-hmm.
And but from our point of view, we don't only worship, so we worship devas, who are beings of light, which means they're generally benevolent to you, but they don't have to all be peaceful. That's a different. So there are fierce forms, right? So before
Mm-hmm.
going to war, the deity to invoke is the goddess of war. She's called Durga, ultimately. She has many names, but she's Durga.
Yeah.
And she's a fierce one. We do a blood sacrifice of a buffalo or a chicken or something to the deity and go to war. And we're completely okay with that, in the sense
Yeah.
that we don't think all deities will only preach peace. There are deities that we invoke during war, there are deities we invoke for prosperity,
Yeah.
deities we invoke to ward off diseases, to
Yeah.
heal
Because
people.
if you didn't have a god of war, like war is inherently
Exactly.
fierce and
Exactly.
terrible,
It's,
and
it's fierce and it's inevitable.
yeah.
Even if you don't start one, it's not like everyone else is going to leave you alone, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
So if you
and
don't have a completely what's it called when you never,
Peaceful.
yeah, peaceful, or there's an, yeah, whatever. Yeah, then you gotta have a god of war, I guess.
You have to have
Yeah.
balance, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you can't only ask for prosperity and peace and enlightenment and assume that everything else is fine. Like we embrace reality in its full spectrum. That's how I see
Mm-hmm.
dharma. Is like we don't believe in turning the other cheek. We ask what is the context,
Yeah.
right? We ask, is this a place where it was a mistake that they slapped me by mistake, or they regret it? Then, then we still don't turn the other cheek. We say we don't hit you back,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, but there are times when we're like, no, we have to sustain this system, and it is perfectly valid in our system to invoke those deities, and there
Mm-hmm.
are rules. It's not you go psychotic and just ruin everything. There are rules of war, there are rules of engagement, and there are do's and don'ts. But we have very clear philosophical basis for peace and for war.
Yeah. I think we do
uh,
in the Catholic Church as well. There are,
mhm.
you're allowed to go to war if you need to, kind of.
Right, I mean, the Catholic Church wouldn't have survived 2000 years
No,
if it didn't have that.
definitely not. That's a
Right?
good
I
point.
mean, if they didn't launch the Crusades or if they didn't go to any holy wars, like it would be a very different reality, and
Mm-hmm.
Catholic Church probably only be one church in Rome today, and that's about it.
Yeah, if even that, I don't know.
Even that, like,
How did you end up in a Christian school? What was
oh,
the
there
story
are a
there?
lot of Christian schools in India, and I think a lot of the missionaries, the way that they try to do outreach is they start schools
Mm-hmm.
or they start hospitals, and it's a commendable work that they do. To be
Yeah.
honest, the Hindu society either doesn't have or didn't have the resources to do their own schools, colonialism, poverty, all kinds of things, and they didn't even. I mean, I would say Christian church is much better at organized outreach, organized service. Hindu society is really good at localized social services. If there's
Okay.
someone starving, so in our temples we have free food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have these systems. Okay, free food. There is some Ayurvedic, like Indian traditional medicine, that is administered in the temples and all of those things. But I think the church is really good at like large scale management of big schools, universities, all of those things. And in India, you'll find a lot of Christian run
Mm-hmm.
schools, and they're generally considered to be of good quality.
Well, that's good.
Good quality, and also English education is better there because
Yeah.
obviously they have more of that church influence. And because Indians really like to learn English early on, like, okay, go to a Christian school. And I'll also say, by and large, I don't know about all schools, but in most schools, because the majority of students are not Christian,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of the indoctrination or evangelization is sort of subtle. They
Yeah.
cannot be too open about it. They can't say your gods are bad. They can't do that openly because 95% of the students are
Yeah,
not
they would
Christian.
get a lot of pushback, I bet.
They would get a lot of pushback, and it's just not, it's not good for them from a long term point of view.
No.
Like the church is smart about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could do it, and they could get a couple of schools to convert, I suppose, or whatever, but the backlash would be such that all their operations might stop, so
Yeah.
they're more subtle about it. So they try to say, sometimes you can see through it, like Hindus, we usually have a dot on our forehead.
Mm-hmm.
It can be anything. It can be a red one for women usually. Men also do the red one, but there's like we do ash sometimes, like gray.
Okay.
And they would come up with rules like, okay, no
You get a
open
boring
religious
color.
symbols. No, they would be like, no religious symbols should be visible, sort of thing. So like that's kind of obvious because you have your cross on your
Mm-hmm.
neck and that's not visible, but you're clearly doing this because there's all kinds of things that they would do. And like certain festivals like we have Holi, right? The whole like color festival.
Yeah, yeah, I
They
heard
would
that.
come up with rules like no, you should not look like any color the day after Holi. Hey, it's not possible because you wash it off, but
Mm.
it's not like you'll be exactly the way you were. For a couple
No.
of days, you'll still look red and yellow or whatever.
Yeah.
So they would
Sounds
try to
really
come up with
fun, by
these
the way. I
things.
know some people who went to, I think, Nepal to
Uh-huh.
join. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I've played it as a kid. I haven't played it in a while now, but it's a lot of fun. It's a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah, but it reminds me kind of throwing water balloons and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. We didn't do a lot of the balloons. I think the water balloons is either more prevalent in other parts of India or it looks better on camera, so it's captured more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
It looks more fun. I don't think we do it as much because it's a lot of work to fill up balloons, water
It
balloons.
is. It is.
Imagine, imagine we would start playing at 8 a.m. We would go up to 3 p.m. How many balloons? Who's filling this?
Yeah.
We're not doing that. Yeah, so we do just the what do you call it? The piston, the syringe like thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we
Yeah. I
fill
don't know
these
what it's
giant
called. It's
syringes
like
with
long and you squirt.
yeah,
Yeah.
piston syringe. I don't know what it's called,
Yeah.
but yeah, we used to have these big ones and just have like a huge tub or tank of
You like
water.
feel like
You
this,
just
right?
fill
Yeah.
it. So you add some color at the top, and then you just go around, getting people colorful.
Nice. That sounds awesome, actually.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot
Yeah.
of fun.
So what is that festival? Like
Holi.
yeah.
It's called Holi. And see, the thing is, this may not be the standard narrative of it, but the thing is, there are festivals
Hmm.
and there are stories around festivals.
Yeah.
They're not. It's not a one-to-one mapping.
Okay.
If there's a one of the most popular festivals across India is Diwali, the
Hmm.
firecrackers thingy. Different regions have different reasons for it, but they all celebrate it on the same day and call it the same festival. And there are
That's
commonalities. There are like
interesting. Yeah.
very similar things we do. Like everyone does firecrackers, everyone does certain things, and everyone thinks it's the most important festival in their yearly calendar or whatever. But some will say it is Lord Ram who's come back from exile. It's from one of our classic epics. Another will say it's the goddess has destroyed the asura of ignorance or something like that, right?
Okay.
And another will say something else, but it's all the same day, the same way, everything. So I think the festivals are of the land, pre-existing festivals,
Yeah.
and then a lot of mythologies people developed around it.
Hmm. That's super
So
interesting.
the
It would be like we in the Western world said we're celebrating Christmas for different
for five
reasons.
different reasons
Yeah.
in different regions, right? Um, I think the way I try to understand it is, or the way I think about it usually is, the festival and certain aspects of that festival have deep spiritual and occult value, right? It's very specific phases of the moon in specific Indian calendar months, right? It'll never map to the same date on the Western calendar or the international calendar. It'll move because it's usually like the 11th phase of growing moon of the month of this or whatever, and the
Hmm.
month also moves. I think there is a spiritual and occult value in doing certain rituals and behaving certain ways around them. That is our understanding of it. And now like the vast majority of masses are not into occult, and they don't understand the deeper significance, and they don't care to. Like that's not how we operate, right? So then these popular mythologies are foisted on top of it
Hmm.
to make it relatable and enjoyable
Yeah.
to the masses. Like the whole elephant god, right?
Because
He's
you
worshiped.
need some reason. You need to tell people because that
Correct,
question will come up. Like, why are we?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, why are we doing this? Why do I have to wake up at 4:30 on that night?
Hmm.
Like if it's just for fun and if it's just to commemorate the return of the hero of a certain epic battle or whatever, then like he wouldn't care if it's 4:30. Like wake up at 6 and cut a cake, and what difference does it make?
Yeah.
So those stories help. inspire you and connect you to the ritual you're performing, but the ritual itself tends to have a more occult significance in my understanding and belief, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be like wake up at this hour, do these certain things, and then the rest is regional variations. Some
Yeah.
people do a dance in the evening, some people, that doesn't matter. It's how you celebrate it. And that's true for Holi as well. So when you say why do people celebrate Holi, the most popular mythology around it is that we have these stories. We call them Puranas. It's essentially like mythology, right? And one very popular story is of this demoness
Hmm.
called Holika, who threatened, I believe, some very pious boy. So if you look at the occult of it, the meaning of it is that when certain spiritual energies are trying to rise, there are forces that try to stop them from growing.
Okay, so
But
this boy
the
was kind of
mythology,
a threat in a
yeah,
way.
he was a threat. He
Yeah.
was a threat because he was very pious and he was growing spiritually and all of those things. And she threatened him
Hmm.
in that sense. And I believe she then burned, like her body was burned. And then so the main ritual of Holi is actually the night before Holi, people burn firewood and sit around it and chant certain or tell a story from that mythology or chant certain shlokas, mantras, whatever, right? And then the next day they wake up and they throw colors at each other.
Hmm.
And so the color bit has nothing to do with
The burning
the
and everything.
mythology,
Yes.
right? But then the two are sort of they go together. You have to do the night before, you have to do that, and then the morning you get to enjoy this. So it's almost like the spiritual and the cultural are married.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I've been thinking that with the Catholic rituals as well. Like you have fast, and then you have this midnight vigil mass
Mm.
where you're really tired, and there are candlelights, and it's really beautiful, and you're kind of in a daze, and then you
Yeah,
get to go home and eat whatever you want
eat, right?
after.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This whole thing is just so perfectly put together to make you feel something. And
It's a part of your life now. There's
yes.
also it standardizes things. There's no uncertainty about what could I do. Everyone's doing it together. So we have a very similar one. It's called Shivaratri. So Ratri means night. Shiva is the deity.
Hmm.
So what people do is they fast the whole day, but the special time is the night. So they have to stay up all night, and then they can only sleep around four once the sun rises, and they can only start eating then. And so that one day in the year, everyone, fasts all day, and then they go to the temple at night and sing songs of Shiva and, worship him and, invoke his chants and all of those things. And then they go back home and sleep in the morning. And yeah, it's a very universal thing. I know in Islam they have like a
Ramadan.
night vigil
Ramadan.
kind of
Yeah.
a thing as well. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Ramadan, but they also
Oh, yeah.
have a separate night vigil thing.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know.
Shabbi ki Raat, I believe they call it something like that. Shabbi ki Raat. At
Hmm.
least where I come from, that's what they used to call it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think there is merit to these things. We also have in Norway. I don't know if other countries do this, but when the sun turns in the summer,
Hmm.
we
The
have
equinox
this.
and
Yeah.
the solstice.
Yes, we have this, especially where I'm from in the south. We go out in a boat and we burn this huge fire.
That's global,
Yeah,
right?
and
Because we
yeah, we do all these things that are supposed to happen this day,
correct.
and I think there is an importance to doing these things. To
Mhm. Yeah,
when you live a
and
life,
you will notice that these have survived the Christianization.
Mhm.
These are pre-Christian
Yes,
rituals. These have nothing to do with the story of Christ,
no, but
right?
they put a saint name on it.
Correct. Correct. This is how you marry traditions is you don't take something that is a pre-existing pagan ritual and culture. You can't just say don't do this anymore because then people are just gonna do it. And
Because
now
it serves a value. In
correct.
yeah, in I think at least in addition to
No, it
being a
serves
tradition,
a
it
value culturally
hmm
because now did you say this was in Norway?
yes.
now Norwegian people have something that binds them as a people, right? It has a cultural significance. Like we do Pongal, the same thing, like the summer solstice usually happens March-ish every year because
Mm-hmm.
our calendar is not exactly tied to the Western one. It changes a little bit, but March is when it happens. And it's the same thing. People go out in the sun and they celebrate together. They make certain foods, very specific foods like rice, porridge, and milk and harvest. It's also
Mm-hmm.
when a lot of harvesting is going on. You go out in sun and we fly kites.
Yeah.
So the reason we fly kites is we are supposed to view the sun that day, ritually
Mm-hmm.
speaking. So they married this cultural tradition onto it where you go fly kites, you're invariably going to get some sun, look at the sun, hang out together. And this is a 5,000 6,000 year old festival. Just stays as is.
Yeah, that's
And
amazing.
people come up with all kinds of mythologies for why it is celebrated. This is why
Yeah, you
essentially
can change everything around it, but it's still
core is the
the
same.
core is the same. Yes.
Yeah. And you ask any person from my region, like I'm Tamil, like a specific region, right? We have our own language and everything. This festival really makes us feel as a people, as
Mm.
one people. We are
Yeah.
There are festivals that everyone celebrates, but this is such a cultural, regional thing for us that it binds us. And this is what you cannot lose. And so, like any new ideology or spiritual system that comes in has to map onto it. It cannot try to erase it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's like the summer or the sun thing here.
The
It's
solar
it's
cycle, right?
so
Yeah.
it's so obvious for us because our days
Right, right, right.
this whole 24 hours basically light all day, all
Mm,
night.
mm, mm,
So
mm.
it's
Right.
such you can't really get away from it because that's how it is.
It's culturally significant now, but probably 10,000 years ago, it was of very vital importance from a survival point of view, right? You
Mm,
needed to migrate at certain times. You need to know where game is moving, where to hunt. It
yeah.
depends on how the sun is moving. Now you can start planning for spring rather
Mm,
than storing for winter because these actually also meant something from an everyday, like survival point of view for them
mm. Yeah, because
beyond.
it signifies the day that the days are getting shorter now. So it's
Correct.
winter is coming basically.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Uh, okay, we went into
Yeah.
certain
I
rabbit
think
hole
it's
that has
interesting
nothing
to
to do with.
compare and to listen to, because there are a lot of
Yeah,
parallels. There are a lot of differences as well, but there are a lot of parallels.
yeah, there are a lot of parallels. I know the Iranians also have the same thing. In Islam, it is not acceptable to follow any traditions that are not Islamic or that are pre-Islamic or pagan. All of those things. And so, for about 1200 to 1400 years now, they keep banning this festival called Nowruz. It just means New
Yeah.
Year.
Mm-hmm.
It is their solar New Year happens exactly around the time ours happens, like this March, April time.
Yeah.
And they keep banning it, and Iranians just keep celebrating it.
Yeah.
Every year this happens. They keep for 1400 years. Every king, every whatever comes is like this is
Not
not. This is
allowed.
pagan. This is satanic. This is unacceptable. This is blah 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 blah. It's like yeah, well, millions of people came out on streets and did it anyway, and it's very similar. Boil, cook something in the
Yeah.
sun, hang out together, do certain very specific things. If you try to ban it, good luck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't really punish millions of people, can you?
Yeah.
That's
Like officials, government officials are celebrating. Like
yeah.
you can't stop this.
No.
Yeah, I think the Catholic Church is smart to try to
Mm,
co-opt it rather than ban it.
yeah.
So yeah, they give you a saint or some story, some because you can't say Jesus came there.
No. No, you can't.
You're like, I'm not buying this.
No. No, because Jesus never lived somewhere where the days
Yeah,
were super short in the winter and
yeah,
super
but the
long in the
saint
summer.
man. So it's like here's the saint, and
Yeah. Yeah, here's a
uh,
replacement. person. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
and
usually
Norway is
that
not Catholic now; it's
okay,
Protestant. So
Protestant, I see.
the saint name is still on that holiday. It's Saint
What's the
Hans,
name of the saint? I'm just curious.
Hans, like
Hans. Okay.
Hansel and Gretel, kind of. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and Hans is a very common German, Northern
Yes,
European name,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Hans. No, but I asked because a lot of times how these saints are made, and this is universal. It's not just Catholic. A lot of cultures do this. It's usually a pre-existing pagan figure that you already revere,
Hmm.
and they just say, well, he was actually a Christian
Yeah,
saint, who blah
yeah.
blah blah, and it's just like the seamless migration
Hmm.
from one system of spiritual whatever to another, where they try to keep as much intact as possible
Yeah.
without shocking people into it.
And now we're Protestant, and we just won't mention. It would
The
just
saint.
keep the name, and we'll not talk about why. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I know
They didn't get into the saint's
Catholics.
name on the day.
What?
They
It's the
didn't
same
get
name
into the
of the
saint.
day. Yeah. Still,
Oh,
even though we've been Protestant for 500 years or something like
I
that. I
see.
don't
Oh,
know.
it's a very early adoption of Protestantism then.
Yeah, I know. I just said a number ish.
I mean,
But yeah.
still, okay, I
Yeah, I
see.
know
What?
being Catholic was illegal for a time.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow,
But
really?
that's hundreds of years ago though.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah, I'm
know,
sure, I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah. What kind of Protestants are you guys? Like, what denomination?
Uh, I don't know. I
Oh,
have
you
no
know.
idea. We
I mean,
had
I
the
know.
state
Mm.
church that turned into during my lifetime. It's turned into like just a Norwegian church, and it's separated from the state.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. I
So
see.
I think it's just the run of the mill Protestant. I don't
No, I
know.
don't know a lot of Protestant. I ask because I went to a Protestant school, but ours was, I believe, Methodist.
Yeah, I don't know if it has a name even. I'm not sure.
Mm. Maybe the Norwegian Protestant church, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay, okay.
And
School.
we have a lot of small ones as well, like
Mm.
Pentecostal, where in the south where
Oh,
I'm from.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think they're pretty large at some places.
It's not a very religious country, is it?
No, no, it's not.
No?
You go
Okay.
to church to baptize your children,
Mm.
maybe on Christmas Day to get married.
Mm, mm, mm. So it's just very
Like someone
cultural
dies.
significance
Yeah,
more than
it's
religious. Huh. And you think that's going, which way do you think it's going? It's going more or less? Are people getting or trying to come into the church more, or are
less,
fewer and
fewer and fewer.
less?
Yeah,
Huh.
it's more and more common to have. I think they call themselves humane, ethical kind of. You can go there for all the rituals instead, and that's getting more and more
Uh,
common.
I see, I see, I see. Without,
So
wow,
instead of
okay.
baptism, you have a name celebration or something like that.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm. Do you think that might have anything to do with higher mental health crisis in like Scandinavian countries?
I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'm guessing if it's rising everywhere else, it's probably rising here as well.
Mm.
Um, I think so. Yeah, connected to
No, I
what we're
remember.
talking about why we're doing things, and we're also pretty rich countries, so you have a lot of
Mhm.
time to think about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's definitely correlation with wealth
Hmm.
and mental health issues. No, I asked. I don't have the stats on all mental health issues across the world, but I remember reading somewhere that Norway, Sweden have some of the highest and growing suicide rates in the world, and
I'm
also
not
euthanasia
surprised. I
rates
know we have very long waiting lists and
for euthanasia.
overworked healthcare system for
Uh,
mental health in particular.
I see, I see, I see. So I always thought I wondered if it had anything to do with not or reducing attendance at church because I'm just biased. I'm thinking like, how are you guys finding meaning?
I'm biased too, because that's my experience. That's been a huge problem for me. Um, that I don't feel I've like this is what you're saying about the nihilism. That it's been bothering me to be a nihilist for the years I was. That I'm
Mm.
still kind of that, but more
Mhm.
spiritual than I was.
Right, right.
Um, and that's
I
been
don't
really
think it's
helpful.
binary either.
No,
I don't think it's binary in that sense. Like now you're spiritual and everything's. I think you there are phases of good faith and phases of like, am I just delusional?
yes, yeah, yeah. You get faith and then it disappears. Maybe I don't know how,
And
but it comes in waves
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah. I think so,
Mhm,
but I'm like I said, I'm biased as well.
mhm.
I'm seeing this from my experience and how I've experienced life.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard of anecdotal cases where someone who's completely lost, sort of, lost as in they've really bad mental health issues, blah, blah, blah. They make a transformation because they have this spiritual epiphany or something. So maybe I'm just biased from that point of view as well, is that I've heard of those stories and I feel like, yeah, I can see how that might happen. Um, and I've definitely seen anecdotally a correlation between um, being very certainly atheist, like I'm sure I'm an atheist and I'm sure there is nothing, and mental instability. I'm not even gonna say health issues. I don't know if you can diagnose them with anything. There's a lot of hedonism and there's a lot of drug abuse. There's a lot of and again, it's a very biased opinion because maybe I'm sitting at a place that's the consequence of this
Yeah, yeah,
belief.
exactly. It's the
So,
same for me. But I have met people who's been really, really vocal about removing religion, and
mm,
that
mm.
part I think is why do you want? Why is this so
Yeah,
important to you?
I
Why?
actually, yeah, I actually don't. I used to, I used to struggle to articulate why I was against it. I think I always understood some value in it, even if I myself wasn't very enthusiastic about it to participate myself, right? I wouldn't be doing all these spiritual practices, but I sort of felt like they have value. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not for me right now, but they have some value. I've come to like a better understanding for myself around it is now I say there are things of value that are not of immediate scientific value to the individual,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that should be fine. Like if a bunch of people come together and worship the sun on a certain day of March every year, there is no reason for you to talk about the sun is a star and you are an idiot.
Yeah. No.
Because there's a long term, from an anthropological point of view, there's a long term value is this group of people are now are bonding and they have a sense of community, and when things go bad they will look after one
Mm-hmm.
another. And even from that secular point of view, this is a more stable unit where the individual is safer, is more supported, and has a sense of belonging. Pure rational individualism may look good at that individual point of view, where you're like, look at this idiot worshipping the sun, whereas in the long run, it's going to fail the group.
Yeah.
And I definitely understand. I am an advocate for group oriented policies as well, right? I don't agree with the American sense of individualism, hyper individualism, where like individual rights matter.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's not that everyone lives in a commune and is like the socialist or whatever. Individual rights matter, but they can't be the only thing that matter. Like, the group, there is, because we have both levels of consciousness in ourselves, right? We feel as individuals, but we also feel as some group. It
Yeah,
could be
we feel
your
the whole
could
as
be
well.
your sports team, it could be your community, it could be your family. We all have that consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and when the system of governance only acknowledges one level of consciousness and not the other, it's bound to lead to bad outcomes, I think.
Do you have any concrete examples of what you're?
Sure. For example, in India, in certain regions, we have some long-standing cultural and spiritual traditions,
Mm-hmm,
right? Now, from a purely Western liberal point of view, the state should neither encourage any of them nor discourage. The state should just be agnostic and be like, hey, you guys want to shoot up drugs on that day instead of going out in the sun? It makes no difference to me.
mm-hmm,
I think the role of the state should be I acknowledge this particular set of traditions of this land and of this people,
mm-hmm,
and I will play my role in protecting it. It's
mm-hmm,
not supposed to enforce that everyone go out and fly kites now. That's not your business. But you will play a positive role in making sure that those systems are, at least your role in protecting those systems are met.
mm-hmm,
Now, at the end of the day, if you do everything, for example, they could even say, why have the day off today? Individual rights, like some people want to work and you are depriving them of the right to work that day or any
mm-hmm,
of those things. But as a state, your job should be no, I want people to have the opportunity to celebrate this
mm-hmm,
because it's a long standing tradition on that day. And so I give the day off. And there that role ends. They can't then say everyone therefore has to go out and play. That's their
mm-hmm.
individual choice.
Yeah, so you can you don't have to celebrate, but we're facilitating a
Right.
world or a country or the community where you can.
Right. And maybe on that day they can cordon off certain, look, we have a kite festival, right? There are parts of the city that are cordoned off because there are kites everywhere. You don't want motorcyclists to get caught in strings or whatever.
Mm-hmm,
You create the right kind of environment on that day, because you're acknowledging that these traditions and these systems are good for the group as a whole,
mm-hmm.
and we should encourage them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it
Um,
reminds me of our national day, or what is called our Independence Day. It's 17th of May, and
mhm.
all the children, all the schools, they have flags and they walk around in a parade, kind of.
Yeah,
And you have your national uh, suit on if you own something like that,
yeah,
and you close off the whole center of the whole city. You
right.
can't drive to the city today. It's
Does
impossible.
that make sense from an individual rights point of view? What if I sued the state? Is like I wanted to go to work today and you
Hmm.
cordoned off half the city. I This is against my personal
Yeah.
liberties.
Yeah, I
Don't be an
actually
idiot.
work this day, so and part of our campus is in the center of the city. So you either
Mhm.
have to go there really early and risk being stuck
Mhm.
there,
Mhm.
or but it's or you don't go at all because you
I
just
mean, it
can't.
doesn't come for free, right? There are sacrifices people have to make to facilitate that.
Yeah.
And they can be reasonable sacrifices. You don't have to expect someone to do something unreasonable at their personal expense, right? And it may also be unequal sacrifice. Not everyone sacrifices exactly equally for any given thing,
No,
right?
if you live in the
You have
center of the town,
you live there, so
you
you pay more than
yes,
someone in the village who's driving out, and that's fine.
yeah.
Like there are other ways that sometimes and that's what builds that sense of community and bonding is like we have sacrificed for each other, and
Hmm.
there's that trust and give and take that comes in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's doable. It's just not well articulated. The
Mm.
need is not well articulated. I think everyone fundamentally emotionally understands this, to be
Hmm.
honest. It's just that in a space of hyper individualism combined with hyper rationalism, it becomes hard to defend it in that framework.
Hmm. Yeah, it does. But I think there is something to be said about this. Like personally, I think that what we've been talking about with the community feeling, with the traditions and the feelings you get from not eating for a day and then eating,
Right.
and all of these things, and having Sundays off like is
Yeah.
common here. For just that example alone, you need a rest day. It's
Hmm.
to stop people from working all the days.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I'm sure you can have rules in place for that, but it's a good system to have it. I think.
System, yeah.
Yeah.
I think those communities also do better long term. I think, and individuals also in those communities are sort of better off um, because they find that sense of belonging. Like there's less anxiety about you. Sort again, there are bad examples of this where you force everyone to be exactly a certain way, and it can be oppressive. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that if you just do this and whatever else you do, it's fine. Like there are still rules there. There is you still have the individual consciousness, and I'm not going to sacrifice everything about myself for the group, right? Very few people do that, like soldiers, right?
Hmm.
But most majority, vast majority is not going to do that, and you have to respect that.
So what I'm
We all
hearing is
make
kind of a middle ground, is what
middle
it's.
ground.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you have to acknowledge both levels of consciousness,
Hmm.
like individual consciousness and group consciousness.
I have this image of India as being more group focused than.
Than the West, yeah,
Yes.
very much. Than the West, 100%.
How
Uh,
how does that? What does that look like?
uh,
I don't know if because Norway is really different from the United States, but it's still Western. So I don't know how
mm.
if you are able to compare to Scandinavian
I
countries.
I don't know. Again, I don't know Scandinavian countries, but because I know the West shares a lot of similarities, and I've heard about how individualistic Norway or Nordic countries in general have a reputation for. You can predict where they will be on a given scale. Like
Hmm.
if you gave me a new question of like, uh, how much free time does the average person have in a week? I have never heard of this stat, but I can tell you Nordic countries will be at the very top.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can sort of make those extrapolations.
Hmm.
I would say India is a lot more group oriented, but not as Indians. It's not an identity everyone feels at all times because you're a billion and a half people.
Mm, yeah.
Everyone is
Yeah.
Indian.
I bet there are
Everyone I see is Indian.
huge
Everyone
differences.
I everything is Indian.
Mm,
That's not a you never optimize. You never optimize for everything you've ever seen.
no.
You optimize within that.
Hmm.
Right? So the tribal awareness is pretty strong, like in the sense that everyone comes from a certain tribe. I call it tribe. They don't call it tribes per se. They're called castes. They're called communities. Called all sorts of things. But everyone has, by and large, less so in the urban areas, but everyone has a general sense of what tribe I belong to and what our role in history has been.
Hmm.
Who have our great people been? Where do we come from in the country? Because not all of India is mine in the same sense, right?
Yeah.
Like I can drive for 1500 kilometers and still be in India, and that's not my native place.
No.
So I have a very clear understanding. Okay, what language do we speak? What traditions do we follow? What deities are our favorite deities? Even though we all share deities, we have more. Every region, every group has a greater love for certain deities
Hmm.
and more temples of that deities in their land, more mythologies that bind that community with that deity, right?
So what
And
I'm
so we
hearing
are all
is that when you're born, when you're raised, you kind of get this not baggage. It's kind of a negative term,
inheritance,
but you get this package that this
inheritance,
is
right?
us.
You're just inheriting a bunch of things.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it is inherited more unquestioningly in India than in the West because I don't think we're that individualist.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure we're not that individualistic.
What does it
Um,
look like when you get this package delivered from your? Is it from your
I
parents primarily, or is it from your
think
community as a whole? Or
so. The thing is, in urban areas, you don't live with your tribe anyway,
hmm. Yeah.
right? So my people, as I would call it, like that very specific tribe, we come from a different province than where I live. My family lives, or where I grew up,
Hmm.
and we speak a different language than there. And I may not see one from my so-called tribe or whatever for weeks, except for my family.
Hmm.
that's fine. What happens is everyone knows their identity, so you sort of have to know yours, even if you don't see your people everywhere. And the way it is, I don't think it's very strongly reinforced. I don't think it's like parents telling you every day, like, we are
Remember,
this.
you're yeah.
Yeah, remember, never. Who are we? Like, we do a cheerleading round at home.
Yeah.
No, it's just oh, you go to school, you talk to your friends, like you see what they eat, you see
Mm.
what you eat. There's a subtle difference. Oh
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
right. We have it this way. Oh yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
Or you speak a different language at home. So when I step out, we speak a different language. We come home, we automatically speak our language. We have that kinship.
Okay, yeah. So it's kind of an
Same fas-
implicit thing, but you can tell by the
it's
differences.
purely implicit, right?
Okay.
You just know it. It's almost like I have nephews and nieces who grew up in a entirely different province and they have a very different language. Like I remember even when they were 3, nobody taught them this. They had the sense like the moment like we would be at home hanging out and they would talk to me in our language and we would joke around. The moment they stepped out, they would speak that language at 3. Nobody told them that. No, it's just so, and I think it's an experience
It's just
across
a
India
pattern.
because
Like when you're here, you speak like this. When you're here, you
yep,
do this.
yep.
Yeah.
It's like when you're in school, you behave a certain way. You don't
Mm-hmm.
behave exactly the same way at home, and it's that sort of I think awareness that everyone just naturally has. And then there is explicit stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
people will ask you, "What tribe are you?"
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon in India to be like, "Oh, who are you guys?" Or be like, "Oh, your native language is not this. Oh, how come? Where are you from? Blah blah. Blah. Where are your people from?" I don't think it gets negative generally. It's more of curiosity, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
wants to
Is that a common
know.
thing to ask people? Like, hi, my name is this. What's your name? What's your tribe?
Not right
When in
away. Not
the
right away.
no.
Uh, no, not right away. But the closer you get, in certain circles, it's very okay to ask.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there are certain groups that are more tribal than others. So they will make friendships that are from their own, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's a little harder. It's not even an option for me because we were a super minority in where we were staying. So if I
So
would
you
have
could
no
go
friends.
without friends, or you can
Yeah, for years.
yeah.
Um, and my parents were also pretty liberal in that sense. There are parents who would be like, "Oh, hang out with our
Mm.
folks, our guys or whatever." My parents didn't care. They'd be like, "Just go wherever, just have friends or whatever." And I think the way it actually starts showing, these are all more subtle things, right? The way it is actually consequential is marriage.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to marry within your group. This is true for all groups. It's a very, very strong correlation. It's
Mm-hmm.
not for a country that's so diverse and interspersed because groups are very scattered. They have their home base, but then huge diaspora for every group. But the intermarriage rates or rather marriage within the tribe is very high.
Mm.
And that's one place that they enforce it. Enforce as in socially enforce,
Yeah.
right? Your
Yeah.
parents expect you to get, because I think what weighs on some people's minds is these are very unique traditions
Mm-hmm.
and we have to preserve them.
Yeah, that makes
So,
sense. It
yeah,
does make
we sort
sense.
of, and you have some cultural affinity for the person. You sort of think, there's a lot of shared values.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that can go both ways. Some people may not like that, but
Yeah.
just saying. Um, but there is also marriage between tribes more so now than before. Um, But in urban areas, I don't know what happens. I think they just do a mix of things and like, a buffet of take something from here, take something from there.
Yeah.
But more traditionally, if there is marriage between tribes,
Mm-hmm.
then the girl becomes a part of the boy's marriage,
Okay.
boy's
The
tribe,
boys tribe. Yeah.
fully, fully. Like, so then there is no confusion, there is no fear of losing one's tradition or whatever. It's like the rules are the same.
Mm-hmm.
If
Now you're a
a
part of
girl
this,
from
and you
our
do
tribe
this.
comes
Yeah.
to yours, then she's one of yours, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Kids also are fully of your tribe and all of that stuff.
So it's a kind of a
Uh,
way to preserve traditions in a way.
sure, that, and there is also traditions, but not everyone's thinking like that necessarily. I think that is a definitely a thought like, oh, our language and our not all tribes
Mm,
have their own unique language. Many tribes share same languages, so that's different. But they do. Every group has a sense of like, okay, we have to preserve our whatever, whatever. But it's also very tribal.
mm,
And I mean it in the sense that it's not always scientific thought, like I have to preserve my traditions, therefore I have to do these things. It's also very
mm,
primal. It's like my people. There's
mm.
an emotional gut feeling to it.
Yeah,
It's not just what is the math, how many people of my tribe can marry with.
it's just a
It's
feeling of
it's
this
just a
is
survival instinct,
yes.
and I find that to be a big difference between the
Mm,
West and India. Is I don't see that a lot in the West.
no, I
Because
do
I don't.
feel like parents can be feel like you should marry or be with someone who's close to what where you are from also here, mostly because that's what's best for you, that's where you
Right.
find someone who would understand you,
Uh,
and yeah, and the values and the religions and the, yeah, so
I
there are
think it's a lot more primal in our case.
yes,
Like
yeah,
it's
probably.
not. They definitely say it is better for you. You'll be more compatible, and you will preserve traditions, and 100% that's there. But the gut feeling is like, no, our people. These are
Mm,
our. How can you not? And it's not just marriage. To be
mm,
fair, it's also other things. It's like when someone from the community starts a business, they tend to hire from if they
mm,
tend to hire from their own community, because that's how communities operate. A lot of communities operate as their own banks, in the
mm-hmm,
sense that there are some really successful merchant communities, like tribes that are really good at being merchants.
mm-hmm,
And if you look at their community code, that's not legal. It's not legal or illegal. It's not written in the law. But their community code is such that if you start a business and you fail, we will take care of your basic needs. Try
mm-hmm.
again. But when you do succeed, you have to preferentially hire
Yes.
and benefit the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you
So
have to
you see how
pay back or yeah.
you have to pay back. You have to give back to
Yes.
where you
Yeah.
came from, right?
Yeah.
And you have to hire more from here. You have to start businesses where the community owns land.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things. This can be good in the sense that this gives the individual more bandwidth to mess around and still fail
Mm-hmm.
and still be accountable in the end,
Yes.
right? This isn't a bank that is looking at your social security score, which may be horrible when you're bankrupt. This is a community that says we are the same people and we've married into you, you've married, we're literally the same people.
Mm-hmm.
So your success will mean my our success, your failure therefore must mean that we will help you.
Mm-hmm.
And communities do this. Communities buy property together because they want to secure it better.
Mm-hmm.
They want to own land in certain parts that are more culturally connected to them, right?
Yeah, we
Community.
don't do anything similar at all. I don't think. Maybe the Pentecostal communities actually do that. They bound, buy churches and stuff together.
But
But
no, but
I
that's
don't
very
know
different.
anything else in Norway that's
No, it's
like that.
very different because then
Okay.
the Pentecostal community is not a tribe.
No.
It's a devotion based, it's a belief
Mm.
based thing.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
tomorrow I went to the Pentecostal church and became one of them,
Mm-hmm.
I would be able to participate in theory. I don't know
Yeah,
what their
but
rule.
if you stop believing, you wouldn't be a part of the tribe.
You wouldn't,
No.
but in our tribes, even if you start coming to our temple, we don't
Mm-hmm.
have the same blood. We are
Mm.
not the same tribe.
No.
You see how this is more primal.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
not about belief, it's not about perpetuation. It's not at the cerebral level, it's more at the gut level.
Mm-hmm.
It's are we the same blood or are we not?
Mm-hmm.
Are
Yeah,
we
it's
the
kind of
same
like a
stock?
family, but larger.
We're a clan, yeah.
Yes.
So this is how these tribes grew, is different families just kept growing and then they tended to marry among themselves, and this is, massive communities now. I don't find that in the West at all.
No.
especially in the US, maybe a little more in Europe, if possible. I'm not saying I've seen it, but
Well, our
at least
state is kind of like that because we have this welfare system and everything, but that's the
correct.
closest thing. We don't have these self-driving communities or tribes. So
Right. And you'll see communities, these tribes is what keeps hyper nationalism from happening in
hmm
India. In the sense that um, for any given language group, like my language group, there are probably 200 tribes
hmm
that share the same region, speak the same language. But we didn't have a German nationalistic movement or an Italian nationalistic movement because the mappings are different.
mm
We identify as this nation that speaks this language, but I also have an identity as a tribe within that.
hmm
And the thing that makes India is every tribe has associations and affiliations with a different linguistic group tribe somewhere. So there will be one tribe in the same region as mine, and we're all the same nation by the Western sense because we speak the same language and have similar culture. But that tribe will have an analogous tribe 1,000 kilometers away, and they have some mythology about being the same original group.
hmm
So it's very hard to form these national identities here or
Yes,
sub-national.
because you have smaller countries in a way
Smaller
inside the
countries,
country. You have
correct. You have
yeah.
smaller countries, and these countries are interlinked across.
hmm
So you can't pick them apart because this tribe is going to be like, well, if I became a part of this country,
hmm
sub-country, then I'm sort of distancing myself from my cousins who
hmm
are 3 countries away, and we're the same original tribe.
hmm
So the tribal identity and the national, so-called national, you would call it national, we would call it sub-national identity, and the Indian identity, because that is also an identity, they sort of balance each other out, which is why we don't go to civil war against each other.
hmm Because that was my next question. How do you stop the tribes from
The
having
tribes do
conflict?
fight.
Yes. Yeah, I bet.
Tribes do fight. Tribes do compete.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, these are very tribal beings. I mean,
hmm
tribal entities. I'm saying like tribes or communities are very tribal entities. They do fight, and a lot of times it's very destructive and toxic. But there are balancing forces.
hmm
Uh, in the sense that again this shared language becomes a balancing force. Like I may hate you as a tribe, or our tribal interests are competing, or we're fighting over the same piece of property that we need to acquire, but hey, there are things that are common, and so
hmm
you'll find a lot of cultural practices that tie tribes together. So there will be temples that are shared by tribes, and the deity sort of blesses both tribes. So they have to participate together.
hmm
There are certain events at certain temples that require participation from specific tribes and specific families of those tribes.
That's
So
clever.
we have this, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have this annual chariot event.
hmm
So this is what happens in many temples in India. Is the deity is sort of like the king or the king or queen, right,
hmm
depending on god or goddess, and the temple is sort of like their palace. And once a year, the king comes out to visit the subjects.
hmm
So we have a chariot event. This happens in thousands of temples. Some fixed day a year, we place the deity's representative idol on a chariot and we take across the town to see their subjects, and the people come in. So who draws the chariot? This becomes a diplomatic game. So
hmm
there are very clear rules in each temple about we need one man from this tribe, one woman from this tribe, an old lady, blah, blah, blah.
So
Only
it's
then the
specific
chariot can move.
tribes, or is it just yeah? It's a specific tribes that has to be involved.
Specific tribes.
Yes. Okay.
Specific tribes. One man from this
hmm
tribe specifically, and one man from this tribe on this wheel, one man doing this from
hmm
like whatever that is. And these and every ritual in that temple, right? It's not just the chariot, there is feeding, there is this, there is that. There are specific codes to make sure that they come together, participate together. The temple is a central emotional spiritual place, right? So these tribes sort of learn to coexist. They're like, hey, ultimately, we share this sacred space. So we sort of, some intermarriages happen there, some business dealings happen there. They come to some sort of compromises. These are all extra legal. If you
Mm-hmm.
notice, this has no legal sanction, this has no judiciary, this has no democratic elective. No, these are tribal elders who come together as like, okay, well, and they do fight over this. Sometimes one
Mm-hmm.
tribe will be like, we won't let you, it is our time. That's a compromise resolution mechanism is in place. Conflict resolution, compromise
Yeah.
mechanism is in place.
But what happens if you're a minority tribe? You were talking about.
Uh, you have your own temples. Every tribe
Uh-huh.
has their own primary temple,
Mm-hmm.
and they also have these shared shrines.
So what
So
is your place in this shared tribe if you're a really really
y-
small minority?
I
How
think
is
you
it?
will be given a small role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
You will be, I mean, you have to get a role. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
part of that consensus or whatever, then you get a role. It'll be much smaller. Maybe you don't draw the cart. Maybe you bring milk to the deity. That's your tribe's role.
Mm-hmm.
And then mythologies are sort of tailored around that. Like, oh, one from your tribe once served milk to the deity and the deity was pleased. And you can think of it in both ways, in the sense that from a purely secular anthropological point of view, this is what happened, is that you do some social engineering and use the deity as the central arbiter for all of them to attach themselves to, and you build these mythologies with the same deity with all these tribes, so they feel a sense of shared
Mm-hmm.
kinship as well.
Yeah.
Right, so conflict doesn't go too extreme because they're like, ultimately we have to do these things together.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you could think of it the opposite direction. There are, like, you can think of it as the deity is actually coordinating the tribes to work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
There
I
are,
was thinking that when you started talking about this as well.
yeah, I mean, you can think of it both ways,
Yeah.
and I think in both ways.
Yeah. Because then you kind
I
of have
do,
this authority that forces you. You have to because the state is saying so. So we have to.
yeah,
Their way to
yeah,
move. Yeah.
and we have a lot of stories of the deity. So in our understanding, there are different layers of deities, and there are deities that attach themselves to certain tribes.
Mm-hmm.
So they become the tribe's deity. So we all have like a tribe's deity, a specific shrine in a specific place for thousands of years. No matter, like, we have family in Malaysia, in, I don't know, Australia and South America, but they try to make it to that shrine at least once in a few years to pay respects, because she's sort of like the guardian deity
Mm-hmm.
of this tribe. And so we do think that she can guide us, in the sense, guide individuals and the community to good outcomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they can make strategic alliances for us
Yeah.
and say, you all should come together here so that you all coexist, so that you all don't annihilate each other.
Yeah. That's an
um
interesting, very, very foreign concept, really, for me. And
yeah,
I barely know where my family comes from. It's like, yeah.
that's a big difference, to be
Yeah.
honest. That's a big difference. It's very, I mean, the state, because the state is very western
Mm-hmm.
in India. The construct of the state is very western, in that very constitutional and rational and secular and individualistic. So the state keeps trying to destroy, not destroy, but sort of erode these institutions,
Mm-hmm.
because they think it is backward to still not get on the individualism bandwagon. Like, let's just all be individuals, pay taxes, have a job, and live a scientific life. Like, what is all this? What is this group and groups fighting groups and deities helping groups? And
Yeah, because
but we
they
see
need you to pay taxes, basically, to
we
exist,
need
to
you
have
to pay
money to spend.
taxes. And I don't want to get conspiratory here, but I do think capitalism would prefer that individuals be only individuals, so they're easier to influence. I'm not saying
I
it's
don't
one
think
capitalist or
that's
the other.
I don't think that's a conspiracy theory at all.
No,
And
no, the reason I'm saying it sounds like a
mm,
conspiracy theory is that I'm not saying this capitalist or this person is doing it. I think the system as a whole
mm-hmm,
is designed to shred away all other influences from the individual so that it is easier to sell certain products. I
mm-hmm,
don't think it is one person or one capitalist or one billionaire sitting somewhere who's necessarily doing
mm.
something.
Yeah, I
Even if
think
they
that makes sense because for you to buy something, you need to have agency over your own money. You need to that needs to be important, more important than spending it on helping people or
are, and also it's a very illustrative example for me is the case for drugs, right? In the West, and I'm trying to simplify my understanding of this. As in the sense, I'm trying to put this very simply. I'm sure it's more complex than this, but the case for drugs in the West is very much like he wants to do it, he does it. What's your problem?
mhm,
Right? Whereas this wouldn't fly in a group oriented system where it'd be like, he is a part of my group. It
mhm,
does affect me, it does matter to me, and it should. So I will have a say in as a group, do you get to sell drugs to this group or not?
mhm,
So now we get to speak as a group as opposed to him as in the capital driving agent, right?
mhm,
Whoever that is trying to pick us off one by one and say, you don't want to do drugs, I don't sell to you. You don't
mhm,
want to do drugs, I don't sell to you. Oh, you want to do drugs, I sell to you. The others don't get to have a say.
mm.
That narrative gets broken in a group oriented system where we're like, no, you don't get to do this.
Yeah, yeah.
It
It's
does.
easier to convince one person as well than convince a group because
Correct. And you almost force the other individuals to shut up if you say it's a fully individualistic
mm,
system. So what is your problem?
mhm,
That's not a question that'll fly in Indian tribal systems. Like it is my problem. There are
mhm.
toxic elements to
Yeah,
this
yeah,
where
yeah. Yeah, of
pretty
course.
much everything someone else does ends up being your problem.
Mhm,
Again, I think there is a balance to strike. Like if the person wants to visit Europe and you're like, no, it affects me, and like, no,
mhm.
screw yourself. No,
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
mean,
affect you.
thinking when I was a kid, my mom would sometimes be like, "You can't hang out with this person." I'm like, "Why not? You're not there when I hang out.
Uh,
I like this
See,
person. Can you?"
it's as juvenile as that. Like
Yeah.
a kid arguing with a parent, like
Mm-hmm.
it's not you. I'm hanging out with a drug addict.
Mm.
What is your like? No, it does affect me. It
Yeah.
affects both of us. So
Yes.
they get to have a say in this.
Yeah. She might have been right sometimes, but I still think she was wrong about some people. Yeah.
Fair. I mean, yeah, the principle stands. Yeah,
Yes.
it's like they have the right to make mistakes with their authorities.
Mm-hmm.
What quantum of mistake matters? That's where the law has to get in, right? If they
Mm-hmm.
say my child, I throw them out of a window, like
Mm-hmm.
no,
You're not allowed to
but
do that. Yeah.
I don't think so. So I'm not making the case entirely against individualism. I think it's gone too far in the West, is what I think,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, India follows the West a lot, like in terms of its official structures and constitution and how what inspires its judiciary is very Western and very Western liberal, particularly,
Yeah, I think that
and
that accounts for a lot of countries now. Maybe because of the influence of media and yeah,
media,
and
academia,
that's
wealth.
because then we lose this. This is a concept that has been foreign for me for a
Mhm.
lot of my life, really. So if we lose all of these different ways of living
Mhm.
and just westernize everything, I think we lose a lot of.
Such a sad place to such a
Mm-hmm,
it only benefits corporations that want to sell one coke to the whole world, right? We say we drink a jaggery juice, you drink something in Norway. It keeps smaller community businesses running, it
mm-hmm,
keeps wealth within those communities, it gives autonomy to those communities that we do not want to drink something with this, whatever that is.
mm-hmm,
All of that is stripped away. and we're all just one bland same thing. Like it's like you go to Stockholm and you go to Bangalore or you go to Shanghai, they're the same place with minor spice differences. That's a
Mm.
sad place to be.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and you also lose if you're stuck in life, or you, or as a society, we have a problem, and we have the same way of thinking, then we can't see the solution that would have been right there.
100%. And there's an even more existential case I would make is that climate change is coming one way or another. It's whether you think it's human made,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, it doesn't even matter. It's coming, right? Climate is changing.
Mm-hmm.
If we all are on the same agricultural pattern, the same set of seeds, the same set of everything, our practices are the same.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many indigenous practices that retain something that they've learned over millennia, and they might get to survive this apocalypse better than this bland industrial system that we've
Mm-hmm.
created. And you're giving humanity a chance to learn and survive by preserving these various ways of being, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There
exactly.
are nomadic tribes that understand how. Look, if you look at a lot of what is today Central Asia, like Kazakhstan and all of these places, traditionally all of the tribes there have been nomadic.
Mm-hmm.
Horse riding, the whole Mongolian, whatever, the steppe belt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by forcing them to settle down, they've made the place a desert.
Mm-hmm.
Those people back in the day, they knew that this land cannot sustain permanent settlement. You have to keep moving and exploiting and coming back in cycles
Mm-hmm.
and give it a chance to heal. And by forcing all of them to be taxpayers, settle down, have a permanent address, just be normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Sure.
telling an
Yeah.
ADHD person, just be
Yeah.
normal. Why
Mm-hmm.
don't you just sit down?
Yeah.
And by doing that, you've overexploited the land, made them dependent on external resources like fertilizers, industrial fertilizers that they cannot produce. Think of what might happen 100 years from now when there's some sort of deglobalizing event, whatever that is, either war, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they have no supply of these external seeds and fertilizers for a couple of years, and they've forgotten everything about how to live off
Mm-hmm.
that land by roaming around. You've killed that people.
Yes.
And it's what capitalism will do, but
Mm-hmm.
this is why you need community oriented or community optimized policies as well, individual and community, where
The
the
diversity
government.
is what I'm hearing, really.
Correct.
If you have diversity, you have strength.
You have controlled diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm still obviously like diversity doesn't mean a tribe says we will continue human sacrifices and you should
No.
let it
Yeah.
continue. No, that's not okay. But there is some diversity you have to preserve. And I would also say, like, mm, I don't know how to say, it's like communities need more cultural autonomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is this huge build up in India about, how can communities hire preferentially in their own private businesses? It should be equal employment opportunity. It's like that structure would break.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the same trust mechanisms in place with the whole country as they do within their own tribe, and that's why that system succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
We only look at when they hire from within themselves. We don't look at when they fail, they help each other. Are you willing to step up and help them when they fail? No.
Oh.
So there's this urge to make everything uniform because, again, I think Western media tends to portray that there is only one right way of living and everything else is either weird or somehow immoral.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it just,
Yeah, because you can easily point to probably tribes that aren't living in a way that's preferential, maybe, or tribes that don't have a lot of stuff,
Mhm.
and you yeah, you can say like, these people, why can't they
Yeah,
have
why?
less than the other tribes? How do we
Yeah,
fix that? We can't fix that
yeah,
without
yeah.
exactly. So you can
Yeah.
easily
And
find these examples where it's bad, but there are also positives that get lost if you think of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think at the end of the day, the state is a more recent concept than tribes.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be some acknowledgement of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not saying, therefore, everything the tribe does is better than everything the state does.
No.
The state as a centralized unit, political system, allocator of resources and of justice and law, everything. Like, it's God. It's literally God now.
Mm-hmm.
Your healthcare, your everything has to be the state. And this concept is not more than 200 years old.
No.
But these tribal institutions have survived 5,000, 6,000 years old with tremendous famine, no technology, no transportation, no industrial whatever. They've survived. And
Mm-hmm.
that should tell you that there is something there. It's not
Mm-hmm.
zero,
Yeah.
right? Um, and it's very self-sufficient in that sense. The more you empower those groups to take care of themselves, the less they depend on the state to solve all their problems,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this you can almost think of this as decentralizing democracy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I remember as a young adult or teenager, I was really into. 'Cause I had this German teacher.
Mhm.
He was supposed to teach us German, but he taught us about politics instead. He'd,
Very German of
I'd
him.
be so agreeing with it. I think I got a good grade just because I agreed with this politics. Because he was like, I went to school on an island,
Mm,
pretty small island actually, and he was like, I remember the day where I could just go to the mayor and tell him what's wrong, and now it's like way over there, and they're taking this city and
right.
merging it with this. It's horrible. And I'd
Yeah.
be like, yeah, that makes sense. That was, yeah. So yeah, I was
It's-
really into that as well as a younger person. Maybe still
Mhm.
now. But I also see the positives of a centralized thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you can
100%. I
unify
mean,
the things, but it's difficult to know what
look,
to
I mean,
unify and what to.
you have to unify something. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to build a high-speed rail from one end of Europe to
Yes.
another, you expect every tribe to put up
Yeah.
their share of
Yes.
tracks. It's never gonna get done.
No.
There is value, there is optimization, there is certainly value in centralizing, and that's because we have the technology for it. We
Mm-hmm.
just didn't 200 years ago,
No.
and we shouldn't throw away that value. It's not that let's all go back to burning coal in our villages and not that's not the point. The point is, after you have taken care of those big things, you still have to let go of power. You can't keep taking more and more power from
Yeah.
both individuals and groups in that sense.
Mm-hmm. And it's really easy to see the pitfalls of the centralizing as well. That
Hmm.
it's so far to
Hmm.
the decision makers. And the more you merge different cities, and we're on this whole thing
This,
in
yeah,
Norway.
it's this bland. I don't know. We just say Walmart everywhere. You go
Mm-hmm.
to every town in the US, it's pretty much the same town. It
Mm-hmm.
has a Walmart, it has a Target, it has a Safeway, whatever. There's minor regional variations. I'm not saying but it's the same damn thing. Like, there is no, like, unique language or a unique culture or a tradition or something. It's all very just whatever thing is unique is commercial. It's like they
Mm-hmm.
have a special kind of fried chicken by this new company or
Mm-hmm.
this regional company. Like, that's not how you like, I don't think fried chicken is what I form my group identity over,
No,
right?
I
The group
might. But
identity can have an element of fried
yeah.
chicken.
I'm not a
Okay,
huge
then
meat
I
eater,
was
but
wrong.
I like a lot of fried. Not anything fried. I almost said anything fried, but I went to
Would you
Florida once,
go?
and they asked me if I wanted to fry.
Uh-huh.
I was buying this box of fruit, and she was like, "Do you want me to fry it?" I was like, "No, please don't."
Box of fruit.
Yes,
Where was this?
in Orlando
Oh
at
my
a
God.
store.
Fruit.
Yes.
The one healthy thing, organic, unprocessed thing you can buy is like, do you want me to deep fry?
Yes. I was shocked. Yes. And I wanted
My
to
God,
buy orange juice,
very,
and
very
I,
quick
I
story.
took one off the shelf, and it was like, oh, okay, citric acid, corn syrup, and orange
Yeah.
flavor. Isn't this where they grow the oranges?
No. It probably goes to some industrial plant to get
Yes.
cracked,
Mm-hmm.
then pulp as a separate product, and something else as some separate product, and you never get the whole orange juice
No,
ever again.
no, exactly. So yeah, but yeah, fried chicken is yeah.
Would you go to war for your fellow fried chicken
No,
lovers?
no,
No.
we
See,
have
there you
nothing
go.
in
That's
common.
that's the only
Yes.
question that determines if
Mm-hmm.
you're a community or not. I am in the Harry Potter community, but I wouldn't lose sleep over someone attacking us.
No.
Sure, whatever. It was stupid anyway.
Yeah. 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 Hmm.
This is a different path than the
Mm-hmm.
first session of path we went down.
Speaking of paths,
Yeah, new paths.
do you want to say something about your COVID path?
COVID
Or
path. Oh,
yes,
yeah, the original path that we
yes,
were on.
journey.
Um, so I think it took me some time to even recognize there was a problem in the sense that, like, oh, wait, I've been going down the same thought pattern for a while now. Like, something's not right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to even think of that, because you still have that momentum from pre-COVID, and you're like, oh, just keep working, just keep doing this, just go to the gym and it'll be fine. Um, there came a point when I was like, yeah, no, something's not right. And at the time, I didn't know many others were going through it, but that was much
Yeah,
later.
because
I
you know.
wish I knew,
Yeah.
so at least I would feel like this is normal and it's not, you're not the only one, like misery loves company kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. The same.
And it's really, really hard to see that in others as well when you're
Very hard
in
to
your
see that.
house.
You also, well, in your house, but also you'd be surprised how many people are going through this, even if you're interacting with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think if you worked with me at the time, you wouldn't think anything about anything
Mm-hmm.
around me. You'd be like, yeah, okay, I like working with him or whatever. I hate him, whatever that is. You wouldn't be thinking like he's. I don't want to say going through something, but it felt very intense to me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I was just constantly wondering, like, yeah, okay, once this COVID thing is done, what am I gonna do? In the sense that now that I've seen that there is this question I have, there is this almost some need I have that I'm not able to articulate. What do I do about it? Are we just gonna go back to work and commute and network and be done with it? So like I said, I started doing a lot of whiteboarding and
Mm-hmm.
also voice recording around then.
A voice recording as well. Yeah.
Voice recording because it was easier for me to it flowed much more freely when I was speaking than when I had to write it down. I was writing slower than I was thinking in
Yeah.
that sense.
Yes.
Uh, I would write when it was design, not design like in the sense that when there were concepts I want to map together. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't write free flow of conversation. That was very slow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But if
I've
it was
tried that
something
and
like,
I'm struggling to do that. Maybe I
yeah,
should.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's not. It's very limiting. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you're limited by the speed of your writing, but then you want to go on a much faster
Mm-hmm.
path, right? And very early on, I figured like only if I discover something worthy of writing that I need to record, I'm gonna put it on my whiteboard or write it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's anything that I'm just thinking, right? I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just trying to make some sense of this. Then I'm just speaking and
Mm-hmm.
recording it because I don't have time for this.
Did you
Uh,
listen to it as well, or did you just record and?
I didn't listen to it as much as I should have, in the sense that at some point I remember hitting a point where I was like, I've been down this path. If
Mm-hmm.
only I knew I've been like I'm going in circles.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've it's like, what is the question? Okay, what is the problem? And then you keep going into, I don't know this, I don't know what to do, I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you keep thinking, okay, there must be a more first principles way of solving this. This is very, we're so trained in the scientific method. We keep thinking, okay, if I start with bare
Hypothesis.
minimum, exactly only the things I know to
Mm-hmm.
be very true, and then I can build on top of it, on that solid foundation or whatever. And that solid foundation never happened for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was about to
Right?
ask you about that.
Yeah, it
What
never
was your
happened. I kept thinking, okay, there is this layer, right? You
mm,
just, okay, to make it more tangible, it's like you start thinking, okay, what is the problem, right? It's like, oh, there is some void, like I mentioned the
mm-hmm.
last time, right? Something missing. There's a gap.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel fully here. Like I feel this anxiety from not doing what I should be doing or something of the sort,
Or not
It's not very easy
knowing
to
what
or
you
not
should be
knowing
doing.
what I should do in the
Yes.
first place, not
Mm-hmm.
even not doing what I should be doing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like because I don't even know what I should be doing. And uh, you keep going down that path and you say, okay, there is a way to derive this. This is where Sam Harris has his contribution in my
Mm-hmm.
life. Because he tries to derive morality from evolution. And he says morality does not have to come from spirituality. Obviously, he would say that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like,
Yeah,
oh,
because it's a
genetics.
yeah.
Correct.
Mm.
And he's like, genetics can tell you what morals are best suited for species, blah blah blah. I wasn't convinced, but I was certainly trying to go down that path where I was like, what I need to be doing in my life, what values I need to align with, what goals I need to be seeking. They are easily derivable if I just try to take a scientific path and just start with, here are things I know, and then start deriving from there.
Mm-hmm.
And the things I know made less and less sense every time I tried to write them down, right? I would be like, well, what do I actually know? Well, okay, I know I like certain things, I dislike certain things, sure, but then that's not a basis for anything because that changes. I know there
Mm-hmm.
are likes that I have acquired over time. I know there are dislikes, there are addictions I've gotten rid of, there
Mm-hmm.
are addictions I've acquired, and I've identified with all of them at that point in time. But to make long term commitment to living life a certain way based on my likes right now is ridiculous. So then I was like, okay, so then that's not a basis,
Mm-hmm.
right? Likes is not a basis. So then I started going deeper, like, okay, what is stable then? Right? Like, is there something that I can say, like these are things I absolutely know about myself to be true? And I don't remember all the intermediate stages. I remember going, like, this is what I think I mentioned the last time is sometimes I would hit a certain layer and be like, yeah, this is stable. This is
Mm-hmm.
good, stable. And then a couple of days later
It will
it would
fall
unravel.
apart.
It would just fall apart and I'd
Yes.
be like, wait, no, it's not, because that's not it's almost like the same thing I said about likes and dislikes. It's like I say, okay, maybe it's not that, maybe it's some fundamental nature I have,
Mm-hmm.
or it's something else, and nothing stayed. And it's very dispiriting to go through that experience of thinking that it's stable for some time,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking that you've fixed yourself and you've answered that question and you have answers to it, and now you can move forward with your life, and it just
But
falls
then
apart in the middle of a
yes.
movie you're watching, and it's like, holy
And you're
crap,
back to the no
everyone's having
foundation.
fun and here I am watching the whole structure fall
Mm-hmm.
and I'm back to square one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worse because now you're falling down. You're not even where you were, right? At
Yeah.
least you were fine as you were at the time. It just takes you up and then drops you from there.
And then
It
you have
happened.
maybe have trouble trusting the next foundation because you're seeing that
Yeah,
they're crumbling every time
your
I find
hope
one.
is gone. Like, is there a foundation? That starts becoming like, what if I am never convinced and I am always in this endless loop of I don't know because I don't know because I don't know,
Mm,
and like it's not even like, oh, what will I do in my life? It's like I have to keep encountering these thoughts every day then. Like every little thing you do or don't do is an uphill battle because there's no reason for you to do or not do
mm-hmm.
those things internally.
Yeah.
right? You can say it's for income and that's for taxes and that's to pay rent, but there is no foundational reason for you to do any of those things. It's all the same.
Yeah, and there are
Uh,
thousands of ways to pay taxes or get income. So why this one?
why not be homeless? Let me go there.
Yes. Yeah.
Why is Hey, why not be homeless, pay
Yeah.
no taxes? There is no actual intrinsic reason to live this lifestyle and
Mm-hmm.
not live that one. To be entirely honest.
Yeah.
I know that I didn't because I'm lazy and comfortable. That's not the point,
Yeah.
right?
Same.
I'm not claiming I would have easily given up my comforts. It's
Yeah.
an entirely different point is from a philosophical foundational level, they had no difference. It was like what I could shoot up drugs for the rest of my 21 days of life if it's meth
Yeah. Yeah.
back to back.
Yeah. I've been thinking
And
about moving out into the woods so many times, just since I was a child. But yeah.
yeah, and it would all be the same. So I was writing a lot. I was recording a lot. I was writing a little for sure. Like some things I would learn some things. I'd be like, this is a good lead, sort of like, or this is a good thing to think about. I would maybe watch a YouTube video about something and then be like, see, you're constantly exposing yourself to different ideas. It's not entirely like an original discovery from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many influences around you. You watch the right thing or the wrong thing at any given point in time, and I generally think it's a good practice to stay away from very nihilistic media. It matters because I was on TikTok a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it matters what loop you go down.
Mm-hmm.
If you go down
What's
a
a
path of
nihilistic loop on TikTok? I don't have TikTok, so I don't.
suicidal folks who are like life
Yeah.
has no meaning, oh my God,
Of
like you
course.
don't want an echo chamber or an echo chamber for that loop. You
Yes.
have with ADHD, you have your own echo chamber. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need an external one,
No.
right?
Yes.
Uh, I'm not saying you have to seek positive ones and go be delusional and just convince yourself there's no problem. That's not what I'm saying, but you don't need external reinforcement for
No,
sure.
because you have enough of it
You have it.
inside
You have an
already.
intrinsic
Yeah.
reinforcement that's
Yeah.
as good as most people's external ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I did go down that path, and if nothing else, I definitely thought like, okay, there are others. That's when I started
Mm-hmm.
thinking, because I used to be on in my restroom, just sitting there with TikTok for I don't know an hour and 20 minutes, and for about 70% of that time, I would keep telling myself, get up,
Mm-hmm.
just get up.
Mm-hmm.
No, would not happen. Just would not happen. Like it's very frustrating. It's like you're literally fighting an internal battle. It's like, dude, just get up. Like all you have to do is get up, and this loop is gone.
Yeah.
You would be there, and
But if you don't have a voice in your head saying get up because you've
exactly get up and
why
do
should I
what?
get up? Yeah.
What? I'm happy here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I something is taking away my attention from my problems, and this is good escapism.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel validated because the algorithm is always trying to validate you.
Mm-hmm.
No recommendation system is ever going to recommend things that challenge you
No.
because it's not in their interest to do so.
Mm-hmm.
You are in this loop of it's miserable and everyone's miserable, and just so you're mildly better off, you're like, sure, a lot of people are going through this, but then that doesn't solve the problem.
No.
It definitely makes you feel more or less alone, but
Yeah.
doesn't solve the problem. And I was there for some time. I would say I was there in the sense that state, that phase. I didn't even know it was a phase
Because
then. In the
you're
sense
kind
that
of in this echo chamber of people who also haven't solved it.
haven't solved it.
So, yeah, you're in
And
in a community where nobody knows how to get out of it.
I don't even mind the fact that nobody has solved it or nobody knows how to solve it. I definitely didn't benefit from the fact that everyone almost convinced themselves there is no solution, right? Because
Yeah.
I kept going into media where, or even there was this show on HBO called Euphoria.
Mm-hmm.
It's just teenagers living meaningless lives and doing drugs all the time. I
Yeah, I've
felt
seen
high.
that
The amount of
because
drugs
the
they
Healthy
do,
Gamer or Dr. K was reacting to it, and I was like, let's watch this.
Oh my! I
And
watched it and I would be depressed at the end of it. I'm
yes.
like, I don't have their problems, and yet I'm imbibing a lot of those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's the lack of hope that's the problem, I
Mm-hmm.
think. It's not the fact that right now you don't have an answer. At least if you think there is an answer that you're getting closer to, right?
Mm.
And I didn't feel that way for some time. I was like, crap, this is it. It's a dead end,
Yeah.
and this is it. But it's not even a state of acceptance. It's not like, well, this is it. Like deal. It was like circles, and loops, and loops, and loops, and like it's like a, I don't know, like a dog trying to find its own tail or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Keep going round and round and round, and an external viewer will be like, you've been going round and
Mm-hmm.
round and round. The dog doesn't know it. The dog is just chasing
Stop
its tail.
chasing your tail. No. Yeah.
No point. You're not gonna catch it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you will, but even then, like it's still the same thing. It makes no difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry for
so yeah,
interrupting, but the euphoria, I feel like that's kind of like when you listen to sad songs when you're depressed. It's kind of like this addiction. You're feeding that
yeah,
feeling
yeah,
by
yeah.
that's at least the feeling I got when I watched that show.
I watched a little bit of it. I stopped watching because it was. I like dark stuff. Like I watch like serial killer stuff. I watch all kinds of dark stuff, but somehow I was never affected by any of the other media. Like in the sense that you watch it, you like the thrill and the fear and all of that, and then you're out. This lingered on. This
Mm-hmm.
stayed on for days. I would feel like, why do I feel so depressed? I don't even like, in the sense that I was depressed, and then this is like adding to that
Mm-hmm.
depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, for me that was, but it was beneficial in hindsight, to some extent, because I did begin to see the patterns, because as I was recording more and more and more, I was coming to this sort of meta awareness, or this realization that I'm going in circles. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been, because I was looking at some of my older notes, and I'm talking about the actual whiteboarding I used to do. There were very similar concepts that from 6 months ago or something, that I just thought it was amazing at the time, and I again thought it was amazing 6 months
Yeah,
later.
I found it now. Wait,
I
I
found
was here
I,
before.
it wasn't immediate for me, but when I was doing some collation, I was like, it's very similar.
Yeah.
Then I was like, wait, then why didn't it work? Oh, right, I know why it didn't work, because it's not stable. Like it falls apart,
Mm-hmm.
and and then that's when I was like, I think around the time is when I started to maybe wonder, like, okay, there must be something beyond the circle I'm going in. It's at least as much as that, right?
Kind of
I'm
sounds like
going
this
in.
mathematical proof you're trying to solve.
I'm not that mathematical, but I definitely tried to be a little.
Yeah.
It gives me confidence when there is reason. Again, I'm not saying scientific reason, show me the neurological pathway. I'm saying there is, it makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking for meaning, it has to make sense,
Yeah.
right? And it was like, I can rely that I am not skipping steps for my delusion, right? I have to be accountable, because I can delude myself now and have that structure crumble 2 weeks from now, and I'll be the one to suffer again,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
So
So
the proof
math
has
is
to be
sort of my account.
solid because
Correct.
you're gonna be suffering if it's not.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
be sitting on it, and it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
collapse under my,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
right. So to that extent, I was trying to be logical. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not scientific is not the word, but logical about it, and being like, okay, if I don't know what is the basis, if I don't have a foundation, and all of these are tricks my mind is playing on me, or I'm playing on, it's just the mind going in loops, then maybe the foundation is not in this loop, right? It's in a different dimension, right? I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
circle, maybe there is a third dimension to this, where I'm not able to reach with my, two-dimensional circle.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that's when I was like, wait, I know what that means. That's when was like, I think I know what that means, right? At the very least, I thought like, it's not, it's beyond my mind. however you want to think about it. Whether you think it's beyond the dimension of my mind, or I'm not able to arrive at the solution. I was like, the solution is not in my mind for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've looked everywhere in my mind.
Yeah.
There are no new places because I'm going in circles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not in my mind. So then I was like, okay, what's beyond the mind? That's the first time I started entertaining that thought, because until then I was in this Sam Harris loop. It's
Yeah,
like there is only the mind.
visualizing you like walking around your mind, opening doors, be like, "Oh, I've been here before."
And I
Like,
would walk around
yes,
in my
yeah,
apartment in
yeah,
circles at night, 2 a.m., just
yeah.
thinking, thinking, thinking. Um, and then that's when I was like, okay, maybe I should open myself up to the possibility of something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not accessible to me now, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The circles I'm going in, it's not there, but it's somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not able to reach that place now. And then that's when I started thinking, okay, so what was the point of this going in circles? Like, what is this whole thing? Then I was like, okay, fine. Then it it felt mystical to me in the sense that I was like, this experience I was supposed to go through. Like, there was something there. I look back and I'm like, it's not the circle itself that matters. It's the fact that I recognized I'm going in circles, and
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that it's not about me and my ego deriving every solution or find all the meaning. It's for me to like have some faith. Have some, because either this whole thing is meaningful or it's not. And I don't mean that journey or that process. I said journey. uh, or that circle. Um, it's more of the fact that I'm having subjective experience at all
Mm-hmm.
is what gave me faith. To be very honest, that's my secular derivation of faith in a sense, because I didn't have a faith epiphany in that sense. I had a more of a logical way of getting there where I was like,
I can't find anything here, so
there is something.
I need to go somewhere else.
See, the
There's
thing
not.
is,
Yeah.
you can say I can't find the thing here, and you can easily say therefore there is nothing to find.
Mm-hmm.
That's a perfectly logical place to go from there. So, but the variable that changes is faith, because then you say, but there is something to find,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
it's. You can also say there is nothing to find here,
Absolutely
so I have to look somewhere else. There are more places than your head, in a way.
fair, but
Yeah.
there is no guarantee that there is anything
No.
anywhere else at all, right? So that's why you need faith that there is something
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. I am not able to find it now. I think that is the split between 0.99 and 1.01. You go in circles and you can say, I've looked everywhere, there is nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and go down the spiral of euphoria.
Yeah.
Or
So
you can
therefore,
say,
I give
I've
up.
looked,
There is nothing. There's
there
no
is
point
nothing.
to anything.
There's no point to anything. And I've been going in circles, so there's no point in even looking anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, there's nothing. Let's do math,
Yeah.
right? Um, but I think that critical sort of, and I do call it, it is faith, but I think you have to go, you have to get there in the sense that it's not like some divine being is going to present itself to you and say faith. Then that's not faith, then that's belief.
Mm-hmm.
You have seen this being. There is
Yes.
no deluding yourself anymore. But this is faith because I tried to go at it from a different point of view. I was like, if this whole thing is meaningless, does it sit well with me? In the
Mm-hmm.
sense that, does it agree with my, am I okay with this conclusion? And to me, the reason I kept rebelling against that conclusion is because I was like, but I'm experiencing this. If there is nothing, if there is no meaning, there is no higher order, what does this subjective experience have to mean? I could be an unconscious rock, I could be a worm just walking around having no consciousness. And fine, I'm just a biological being, there's no meaning, there's nothing. The fact that you have these very intense experiences, it's not just a passing by cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
That experience is pretty much the only thing you're having at any given point in time. It's pleasure, pain, whatever. So to me, that gave a lot of faith. Like this experience can exist in nothingness. The
Mm-hmm.
organic matter can, the physical matter can, the electrons can. There can be a universe that is populated with all of this matter and have no spirit.
Mm-hmm.
No spirit, nothing. It's just matter.
Because it
But the
is kind
fact
of
that
magical how we work and experience and
exactly,
think of ourselves as a entity. And
yeah,
yeah.
the fact that we're seeing this blue and looking at and enjoying it, it's a
Mm-hmm.
very intense experience. Maybe not blue, but there is all kinds of intense experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me that became like the logical next step. It's like, so I've looked in my mind, there's no answer, but I do believe there is an answer, or I
Mm-hmm.
do believe there is some order. When I put the two together, it's when I was like, okay, maybe faith, which is to surrender your mind. Stop looking in your mind because you don't have the answers in your mind. You don't look for solution in a space that has proven it doesn't have the solution in that space. Then that became sort of like the central piece of, or the central key to my problem at that time. I was like, this is a solid foundation because I don't have to prove this foundation
Mm-hmm.
either,
No, because
right?
you have faith that,
You have faith.
yes.
You just say what I'm experiencing now is real, in the sense that I can't change the experience of it like a delusion any way I want. So if this is real, then I have to have faith that something real is at the foundation of this. You can't create something real, something as real as this, from something that has no basis. And so for me, that became like a root. And it wasn't, unfortunately, it wasn't an epiphany in that sense. It definitely helped me feel better, but it had to take root.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is where your action matters. It's not as if you just flip that switch and, light goes on. You have to keep growing that root. You have to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, I reinforce. You can think of it as reinforcement. You can think of it as some sort of manifestation. You can think of it as spiritual practices. All of
Yeah,
those
because
options are available.
I've realized this as well, that you can have these epiphanies and then you can actually forget them.
You can forget them. This
Yes.
is why I would go in
Yeah.
circles, because you forget them.
So if you don't grow them from the root, like you said, then maybe you go years with that void in the background.
The
And
void, it's also, you can think of that faith as a force, right? When you had the epiphany, all that happened was you were introduced to a force that you didn't know existed. It's like you were blind, let's say, and for the first time you saw light. But that doesn't mean you can walk on the street, because you have to train yourself to keep your eyes open and keep
mhm.
receiving light and keep utilizing it.
Do you have
So,
any suggestions, or tips and tricks to keep to remember to practice? You mentioned ADHD. I also have ADHD. So it's
right.
often that I
I
realize things and then I forget.
The way I would really recommend, even to you, whatever your spiritual tradition is I do this when I drive. Is I
Mm-hmm.
chant out loud because there's no one
Mm.
there. I'm just happily pick whatever is your spiritual tradition. Pick something that appeals to you and requires some discipline, in the sense that it's not something you can sing like a Taylor Swift song. It's something that requires some attention, some
Mm-hmm.
attention, right? It's not, right? It's either you chant certain things or you visualize something. It requires some effort, some attention, and some time. And you have to put in maybe about 20 minutes of your day into it. That's it. And the more you ritualize it, the better for you, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, in the sense that approach it with the respect it deserves,
So what
right? It's
do you then put something in the chant that's related to your epiphany, or
I don't put anything into
no?
my chant. This is a pretty standard chant
Mm-hmm.
that exists for a deity. Uh, but I think there are multiple ways of doing this. I personally, what I do is the chants have certain meanings. So we go over 108 names of the deity,
Mm-hmm.
and every name of the deity is an attribute of the deity, right? It would say you are infinite, it would say you're full of light, it could say something else, right? You have a powerful weapon, whatever that means, right? I think visualization is a very powerful way of, and I know Vajrayana Buddhism does this as well, is you
Mm-hmm.
visualize the deity, or you can focus on the sound of the chant. So it comes down to some form of meditation in a sense that you are arresting your attention and focusing it on a certain phenomenon, whatever the phenomenon. It's either some experiential phenomenon, right? It's either your visualization, in which case you're directing your attention energies onto a certain visual artifact, or it's the sound, meaningless sound. And this really helped me in the sense that I think we touched upon this the last time, is when you're chanting and the chants have a lot of meaning that you're aware of,
Mm-hmm.
then you're fixated on the meaning and then you go down a rabbit hole from there. Like, oh, it means this, oh, it means this, and then, oh, I remember this, blah, blah. But the reason a lot of sounds that are chanted are meaningless is because so you cannot, at least I think of it that way. This is
Mm-hmm.
not spiritual authorities, but so you cannot start or go down that path of, I know the meaning, it comes from here. Oh, this looks like that, it sounds like it's just a sound that you're uttering, and your only attention is on how you are currently uttering it.
So this helps you go down a specific rabbit hole. Is that?
It it helps if done right, if done rightly. This deepens your faith.
Mm-hmm.
I say this because of the specific path that I took to faith. The specific path I took to faith is I repose my faith in subjective experience, right? The fact that I have subjective experience tells me something is there, right? Now, what you're doing through your meditative practice is you're focusing, attending to that subjective
Mm-hmm.
experience more intently. So it is deepening my faith that this cannot be random.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an off chance in a freaky universe. There is something deliberate here, and that deepens my faith. That may be a very personal thing for me, but sound, the fact that I'm experiencing this sound in this moment, this intently, with so much attention, and it really, it has all sorts of other benefits. You can go into sound meditation, and there are a million papers about why it's good or bad. For me, it personally works for that reason, is that
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaning into that basis of subjective experience.
So what I'm hearing really is that you had this realization, and then you've kind of
I'm
it's kind of
reinforcing that
connected
realization,
and to that practice, so that doing that practice makes you reinforce that.
that
So
realization.
you make kind of a habit around the realization.
Almost. That's a good way to put it. I never thought of it that way.
Because
I
I'm asking because sometimes I get these realizations, or I see a quote or something that is really important for me to remember, to not go
mm,
through these loops.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
So I would write on the wall, for example, just
mm,
the
mm.
quote, or
Yeah. I think that's a good way to generalize it, to be honest. I never thought of it like that. I was only thinking of like how I came here and
I
how this
think your
helps
way
me.
is better because walls can change, walls can get cleaned, um, and it can just be background noise. If you have a wall with all these kinds of quotes, it's just
Mm,
noise
mm,
in the end.
mm, mm.
Like I
That's true.
got this tip.
You become normalized or
Uh-huh.
insensitive as to
Yes.
it. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
got this tip to put an orange somewhere.
Mm,
Put an
mm,
orange in a weird place to remember that
mm,
you're supposed to do something.
mm, mm,
And
mm.
that orange just stayed there. And it
It
just,
becomes normal. It becomes
yes.
its place for it.
Yes.
I would say another advantage to the, at least for me personally, the way this benefits me is you're fully self-sufficient. You don't need a wall, you don't need a pen, you have you, your voice, your mind. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I say voice because you have to hear it. With an ADHD person, there are chants you do entirely internally. It sucks for persons with ADHD because you cannot hold the thought.
Mm-hmm.
You the level of attention you want to have at each point in time. Think of it as each instant of time. It's very blurry for people with ADHD. It comes and goes in very badly sampled rates,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
Whereas,
often describe my brain and all my thoughts like a soup. It's just
it's very common. Yeah,
you can take a ladle and you can just take something out and it's random.
yeah, it's not random. Like you will go in with the full intention of paying attention to every syllable of something, and it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
You will develop it as you do it, but I would recommend starting at a much easier place, which is you use your voice. You say whatever you want to say out loud and focus on the fact that it means something to you, that it is giving you meaning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not asking you to delude yourself. If it doesn't give you meaning, then don't do that.
No, no, no. Of course. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm
But the
talking
fact
about
that
these
this
things that I
game,
want to remember, that I want to cultivate, that I want to do more of and remember,
yeah,
and that will bring me a better life if I do. And maybe
right.
others as well, hopefully.
And what I'm also realizing is from a non spiritual point of view, I'm realizing that a lot of the hopeless depression that comes to people with ADHD is purely because of anxiety. And I say this very deliberately because we we experience this hopelessness and depression in our minds, and we attribute it to lack of meaning sometimes. A lot of times it's the chaos of our mind that is leading to this feeling, and we wrongly attribute it to some fundamental void. So, what I'm trying to say with that is once you start training your attention to be more stable and be present in one moment at one point in time more reliably, the
The void.
chaos
The
goes
void.
away
Yes.
and you start to feel more in control and more meaningful about it. And you start to realize that why was I thinking it was meaningless? The same activity.
Mm-hmm.
Me making a noise with my voice and listening to it is a meaningless activity. Think about it. It's a meaningless activity. But I find meaning in that now because my mind has quieted down. So I think there's also that sort of a misdiagnosis we do of ourselves is that we look at the chaos and we think this is because I am hopeless or because I don't have meaning. It may be that, but it may also be the fact that you're not able to hold your thought in one place and feel stable. And I think this exercise really helps with that.
Yeah, that's pretty profound. I need to remember that. So I should, after this, I'm going to make a chant to remember that.
Yeah, if you're, I don't know if Protestants have chants, but I know Orthodox Christians do and Catholics also do.
Yeah. Yeah, you have
Up
the
to you.
rosary and everything.
Yeah, whatever suits you, but yeah, find a chant that you can say out loud, and I would say 20 minutes a day, say it out loud, and ideally, I would do it where you're alone, so you don't feel like you have to say it a certain way or not be loud, or that's why I do it when I drive.
Yeah,
Right? I just
that's
it's all
clever.
me, and I'm commuting, and you can really you need so the only thing you can focus on is just your voice. Think of your voice as a tape recorder playing. If it's a simple enough chant, you don't need to put your mind to actually chanting. You can only focus on the sound of it.
Hmm. Yeah, I just need to find a place where I don't have anyone around me, but which is
Your studio, what
probably my
about
dog, because I'm home alone with my dog a lot. Because
dogs? Are fine. Dogs, if
yeah,
anything, dogs
it's
are good.
really funny because if I chant or something, I don't meditate that often, but sometimes I watch Dr. K or I get the
Mhm.
inspiration to chant
Mhm.
something, and he'd be like,
Ah,
So
you're making a weird frequency sound.
yeah,
What is that? Are you
yes.
okay?
Why are you
Um,
buzzing like a bee? He's a
I will
one-year-old
say
German Shepherd, so he's
home chanting really helps me because it's a very simple thing. You don't have to think about anything. And it's pure sound in the sense that it has no meaning. It
mm-hmm.
has zero meaning, right? It's just ooh, that's it. And you can really dial into like every moment of time as you're saying it, right? Because it's unlike if it's a different word from whatever tradition, it's a word, it's more complex, there's more changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy for you to get lost. If you're just doing 10 seconds of 10 seconds of ooh, 10 seconds of like there is nowhere to get lost. It's just that sound.
Yeah, I
I find that
enjoy it as well. And there's also this the closing of the I can't remember.
like the pranayam thing. Nostril one,
No,
nostril.
he did it with someone called, I think it's called Derek.
Uh-huh.
It's on
I don't know
his
what that
Twitch, and they made this bee sound while they were
is.
doing this.
Oh, I've never
It
seen that.
looks so weird, but it's I really like the vibration ones.
The
That
vibration.
yes.
That really, like even in Om, there's the
Mm-hmm.
and the like, it really vibrates with your body.
Yeah.
It really helps. I took that from Dr. K. Like I was doing other chants, but he said people with ADHD do Om loudly, and he said like 30 times, 33 times, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when I tried it, I really found it easier to concentrate on this because your body is reverberating and it's a simple sound. It's just a primal sound, right? Primordial sound. It has
Yeah.
no scope of going away anywhere on a
Yeah.
mental track. And it's very helpful. I like it.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think you also
Um,
said something about finding where the vibration is. So that kind
oh
of
yeah.
keeps your ADHD mind occupied.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. That helps. What also helps me is I have a drone app on my phone.
a drone
So
app.
like a drone is a drone sorry, musical instrument, not
Okay.
the
Okay.
drone.
Okay.
Right, right, right. Right. So all it does is it sets a frequency
Mm-hmm.
tone so you can match to it.
Okay.
So you're not going off anywhere, and it's a lot beneficial when I do it along with it because there's this background noise to which I'm aligning the same frequency, and then even when I'm not doing anything it's still in the background, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can keep going back to it. It's very calming and it's good. I like that.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
also kind of a busy work where you try to match it. You need to spend
Yeah,
energy
it's
to.
exactly. It's not. See, the thing is, it's that right balance between you don't need enormous amounts of attention to now do this consciously, so your mind is again on a conscious task, versus if there is absolutely nothing, you're free for all. Like your mind can go wherever. There's this sort of middle ground of bringing your attention back, but letting it stay in the sound rather than some activity.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm feeling
Yeah.
inspired to meditate more.
You should. You should. Yeah, I think pure mental meditation or breath work or those things really frustrate people with ADHD. I
Yeah.
know a lot of folks with ADHD who've given up meditation because they're like, it's frustrating. It's more frustrating because you sit down and you're like, not for once was I able to do this properly. Right.
No,
And I
me
think
neither.
this,
And it's the
yeah,
only in the Western world. It's basically the only meditation you get exposed to.
right. Right. I think that Om meditation is much more helpful for me for that reason. It's like it's not entirely in the mind, which is the problematic space I'm trying to solve or resolve. It's outside. It gives something physical to do
Mm-hmm.
while not getting lost in it. That's very there is no technique beyond a point. Like there is no technique, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just chant it, you just keep chanting it. I find it pleasurable sometimes. Like I don't feel like, am I done? Is it 20 minutes? I
Yeah,
wasted.
yeah, yeah. I'm thinking that as well. It's pleasurable, the Om
It is.
chanting. I also like the kind of meditation where it was yoga related, like these
Oh,
poses
okay.
where you have to
Body.
balance. But that has
I've
an
never done
element
it.
of skill to it.
It
I
has.
see
It does have
myself
an.
wanting to be better at it, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
I've never done yoga. So I mean, I've done maybe just because some other people around me were, but it's never, I've never thought of it as meditative, to be honest. If anything, I thought it was taking a lot of effort. I know it leads to very good meditative states. I'm not questioning the practice. I don't think I've been very good at being able to benefit from it, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a way to quiet my mind, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a lot of
I
going on, or I'm frustrated or negative emotions, it's a way to just make it all go away.
I also personally really I found that when I work with my hands, like doing something somewhat nimble, it's very meditative in the sense that now I'm not in my mind, I'm completely outside, right? There is no thoughts about thoughts or whatever. It's like you have to do this outside. It has to take some skill. It
Hmm.
can't be me driving because it's second nature at this point. It has to take some skill, some finesse. Either I'm assembling something or whatever that is. I find that very meditative as well, but the thing is I can't do it every day. I don't have such challenging things that I can do every day with my hands.
Hmm.
So yeah, so home meditation it is for me.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That's the best one I've found so far, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I've been crocheting and stuff. If I do
Mm-hmm.
things with my hands, it's a very, very short way to listen to
I
a
see.
podcast or something like that.
uh fascinating.
It's so difficult to not listen to something when I do.
Yeah, it almost feels boring
Hmm.
after a point.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying. It's the right combination of needs some skill so you can't get lost, so you have to give it attention, but you should also be able to do it every day.
Maybe I should
Like I don't
try crocheting more
new
complicated
patterns.
patterns.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
possibly,
the yeah.
possibly. I was gonna say something like pottery where you make something new all the time,
Hmm.
not every day, but like it takes a good week or two to get better at it, and then that sort of repetitive work I'm seeing is a common theme, like getting better at something, like while you it needs enough of that attention where you
Hmm.
cannot listen to a
Yeah,
podcast and
because
do
then
it.
you start making the wrong
Right, you have to
knots
do
or
the right
whatever.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good tip.
that's good. I might try something with my hands too. Yeah.
Let me know what
Oh.
you figure out.
Yeah, I actually got this wood chipping kit once.
Oh,
So you get box of wood, like one of those pencil woods. It's not right, and you have these
like
nimble
really thin or.
yeah, really thin. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, just about this. Like, maybe I can hold it in my finger and you can make faces. You can etch away at it basically with these sharp tools. I was doing that for some time and I was getting more complex. I don't know why I stopped. It got boring to me beyond a point because I don't know any number of reasons.
Yeah, it
But I
sounds like you have to be somewhat creative
you
to
have to, yeah,
yeah.
there's like I'm done. It's not like I've done everything. I'm like superlative at it. It was more like it's not rewarding slash challenging beyond a point. And I was like, I'll do something else.
Hmm.
Maybe that's an ADHD thing. Maybe I should take it up
Yeah.
again. But yeah, and
What
just
why
stick
I
with it.
stopped crocheting is that I'm done crocheting the things I needed.
Yeah, it's
Now,
like I don't want to be the best and make a whatever out of this. It's just I wanted to do it. I made some things. It's nice, and I'm done.
yeah, I needed a box for my spices on the counter so it wasn't so messy when I made that.
Crocheted.
Yeah.
A, it holds spices like a cloth thing.
Yeah.
How? Oh, it's
Um,
just not tightly interlaced.
it has like a bottom and then you start crocheting upwards. You can't make a really big one because it will fall apart. But I
Okay.
made like this big, maybe.
But the bottom is made of cloth too.
Yes.
And is it crocheted cloth?
Yes. And I think you can also spray it to make it with
Ah,
something to
solid.
make it hard, but I didn't have to because
But things don't seep out.
well, it's containers in the container. So
Ah, okay.
yeah, I can't have poor
I,
spices
I
in
I
there.
was
No,
like,
no,
wow, how
no.
tight is your
Then
crocheting? Like you're putting
yeah,
salt in it and it just okay.
yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. That's still pretty impressive, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So maybe we're at a good stopping point.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. Yeah.
I think it's a good
This
one.
was good. Yeah, I think this was a good one. I think this might have been better than the previous
Yeah, I
one.
think so as well.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
people don't have to feel
Cool.
sad that they missed out because this was
They probably missed out on some very important things, and they are meant to miss out on this.
the universe didn't want them to know.
Yeah.
Isn't that the? Mm. I like that I can blame the universe for my incompetence with
I think
the
we all
secret.
are happy about that to some extent.
Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, I can't blame myself for not being an Olympic swimmer. Like I
it's
just
the
didn't
universe.
have the genes for it to
Yeah.
begin with. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't blame myself. I could have tried really hard, but why would I?
Yes. All right.
All right, Camilla. Nice talking to you.
You too.
And I'm glad we did this again.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
You
I'm
too.
gonna, yeah. All right. See you later. Bye.
See
Let me
you.
know how the production
I will. I
comes
will
in.
send it to you before posting it.
Sounds good.
All right.
See ya. Good night.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.